The City of Seaside City Council, successor agency to the redevelopment agency, special meeting, council chambers, Tuesday, June 11, 2024, 5 p.m. will come to order. Roll call, please.
Council Agency Member Miller.
Here.
Council Agency Member Burks.
Here.
Council Agency Member Garcia Resola.
Here.
Council Agency Member Pacheco. Mayor Chair Oglesby.
Here,
You now have a quorum.
thank you. Next, we'll go to item number 3, which is Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask the acting city manager, Borges, if he would lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. Next, we go to item number 4, which is public comment. Members of the public wishing to address the city council on matters within the jurisdiction of the city of Seaside, but not on this agenda, may do so during public comment for up to 3 minutes. If you have comment on agendized items, we ask that you reserve your comments for that time. We will call you up and give you 3 minutes at that time. For the benefit of the public, please state your name. We do have a couple public participation guidelines we want to highlight and make sure everybody has a fair understanding of what's going on. Okay, some of those comments is blocked, so we'll make sure you guys can read it. I'll go over some of them. Comments should be respectful and relevant to the agendized item being discussed. Personal attacks on any individual will not be tolerated. Threats, including threats of violence, shall not be tolerated. Derogatory, racial, sexual, ethical, and similar slurs shall not be tolerated. No person attending a public meeting shall engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including but not limited to applause, whistling, stamping of the feet, booing, and other loud noises. If a sign, placard, banner, or other similar items disturb, disrupt, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of a city council or its boards, commission, or committee meeting, it shall be not permitted. Comments exceeding the timeline will be cut. Thank you so much. I know the city attorney had a comment to make as it relates to another issue.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and members of the public. Just a reminder, this is our first meeting where we are allowing Zoom public participation, which is why we're going over all the rules that apply both inside the chambers and to our Zoom participants as well. Just as a reminder, Zoom public comment is being made as an accommodation to the public. We are down here at City Hall, so if there is a glitch with the Zoom and you go down, please know that you can come down, the public can come down and provide comments down here at City Hall. So just a reminder on that.
Thank you. Public comment is now open. For public comments in Rotunda here. For public comments in Rotunda, the podium is back in the back. So public comments is open. If you want to make any public comment, you can walk to the podium back there in the corner. What, if you're talking about the budget, we're not at the budget yet. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hold on. Public comment for Zoom is open. There's no participants on Zoom at this time? But they didn't raise their hand? Okay. Public comment remains open. Seeing no one, seeing no raised hands, public comment is closed. Next, we'll go to agendized item number 5, which is the budget study session. Yeah, I didn't go over this with the staff, but are they, if there's any questions that people think they have, otherwise you guys gonna be waiting for the next 2.5 hours to ask your question. If not all the way to 9 o'clock, because we didn't really put in no public comments in the middle of this discussion. So I'm gonna open it up for public comment. You guys can make some public comments, and then, of course, before we close, we'll have another public comment, but in between the departments, we won't be doing public comment. So public comment is open. Yes.
Thank you, members of council and staff. As the city makes final spending determinations over the next couple days and weeks, I'd like to encourage Seaside to continue its efforts towards supporting green business and its implementation of the plastics ordinance. As you all know, I was intimately involved in supporting this ordinance's passage, and without continued support of its implementation, it won't occur. Over the past months, I've had multiple meetings with members of council, city staff, and sent multiple emails, as well as given public comment previously to you regarding past efforts in order to ensure this support continues and that a green business program in Seaside remains both relevant and active. By providing the requested $15,000 in funding, we can continue to provide one-on-one business outreach and support to ensure businesses are complying with the ordinance that was passed by council, and that businesses are provided technical assistance to reduce energy, water, and waste, saving them money and supporting a healthy environment. Your financial support also ensures that Seaside will be eligible for any grant funds procured on behalf of the California Green Business Network. I've written grants over the past 3 months that could more than quadruple the amount of funding I am asking you to contribute tonight. These are grants that would specifically support auto repair facilities, childcare facilities, and the largest grant we are applying for would support any business in Seaside, restaurants, offices, retail, etc. It also opens up the potential for further workforce development with our partner agencies. Grants received by the California Business Network go to eligible communities that have green business programs. Therefore, this small investment by the city would translate to bilingual small business technical support, implementation of the city's existing ordinance, additional grant funding opportunities, and a cleaner, healthier environment. I sincerely and humbly ask you to consider adding this request to the budget. I'll also just add that I was at the opening of the Small Business Development Center last evening, and I met a business owner there in Seaside. It was a fairly small affair, but I left with his card, and he was really eager and interested in participating in this, and he's not alone. And so I really hope that we can continue this program to offer him the support that he needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, acting city manager and city attorney, thanks so much for the opportunity to address you. My name is Juan Sanchez. I'm the executive director of Palenque Arts. As you know, Palenque Arts provides a space that does not exist elsewhere in Seaside. is a dedicated multicultural art center offering free and low-cost art-based classes and events to many families that would not traditionally be able to afford them. We aim to address the issue of inequity in the arts by imbuing our programs with high-interest, culturally relevant offerings that are accessible to everyone. As you know, Seaside has been a community that has been historically and systemically under-resourced and often ignored and segregated from the rest of the peninsula. And Palenque Arts is trying to do something about it, especially around the arts. Until the appearance of our small organization, there has been very little infrastructure, a dance academy or art galleries, except for a couple of exceptions. One of them, of course, the Avery Gallery here. And thanks to your support, we have continued to be able to provide services to our community. For the past 8 years, the city of Seaside has been at the table in a myriad of ways, from offering a mayor's youth grant to our organization, to CBDG funding, to social services grant support, and in the last iteration with sponsorships for our festival. We are really proudly presented the 8th annual Palenque Arts Festival and collaborated with the Recreation Department, and we had members of the council and mayor, of course, addressing our students, families, and all the visitors. We would love to request once again that you include Palenque Arts in your social services grant. We think that we are part of the fabric of this town and that we make this town better. And it is incredibly important that you are at the table. We have been trying very diligently to not just reach out to individual donors, but also organizations and foundations as far as in Chicago. We have one of our largest founders is the Wayfarer Foundation. And as some of you know, we're working towards building a forever home here in the city of Seaside. And your support is paramount. I just came from our brand new teen center. I'm proud to say that after 18 months of trying, we have opened our doors to our teen center at 530 Elm Avenue. Today, we offered a mural class. It was kind of dirty, but it was awesome. At ballet folklorico class and a jazz class. Thank you so much for being with us and for walking with us. I really appreciate your support.
Linda Cunningham, member of the Homelessness Committee, but I'm here as a resident. I planned on speaking, but I just want to say I support both these two people's causes. What they're doing is just fabulous, and I think we're getting a great return on investment. And I hope the budget allows for funding for both their programs because they both sound great. Thank you.
Or currently no hands raised on Zoom for public comments.
Public comment remains open on our budget discussion. I'll say it one more time. Public comment remains open for our budget presentation discussion. Okay, thank you so much. Public comment is closed. We'll move to item number 5, which is budget study session. 5A, receive presentation of the draft fiscal year 2024-25 operating budget, the capital improvement program, the fee schedule, position control list, salary schedule, investment policy and reserve amounts, and provide directions to staff as to any changes to the to be made to the prior to adoption. Just for clarification for the public, this is a 2-day study session. We'll meet here. I guess we scheduled for 4 hours here from 5 to 9. And then we'll meet again here tomorrow night from about 5 to 9, if it takes that long. And then we will try to adopt the final budget on our next regular meeting, which is June 20th. So over the next 2 days, we're just here gathering information, listening to staff reports, and public comment as it comes in. And the next public comment part will be right before we close. Then again, tomorrow night when we start at 5, and then again as we close, and then the public has opportunity to come down on the regular meeting night. And you guys know how it works there too. You have opportunity to have public comment and input on the budget that night. You can also write the city clerk, email, and things of that nature, or come down and talk to us or talk to your council member. Acting City Manager Borges.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the public, members of the council. We'll move right into the next slide, I believe is the city manager's report.
Oh, sorry, I was controlling that.
And I just want to open up by saying that we are very pleased to submit to you this proposed operating and capital budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2025. We believe that this budget outlines a balanced budget that addresses the community's immediate service needs while positioning the city to enhance services and progress. This proposed budget continues to fund staff and programs designed to enrich the lives of the residents of Seaside, including ongoing park, street, and facility maintenance, parks and recreation programs, police and fire safety programs. As we know, some of our key revenue sources are sales tax, property tax, transaction tax, transient occupancy tax, utility user tax. The city supports and works with many local nonprofit organizations with a focus on social welfare and social justice programming. And this budget also supports that as well. We also would like to point out that in fiscal year 2024-2025, the city donated $53,000 from the Mayor's Youth Fund, which is a substantial number. We also want to add that the city is mindful and we are focusing on the next few years as we have flattening revenues. And we're being very mindful on how we move forward. So there was some cuts that occurred this year, which our acting finance director will speak to. But I want to credit our acting finance director, Ms. Jessica Riley, and her team, as well as our department heads, for really coming together and being prepared to move forward with the city in our budget. With that, I just want to point out some highlights. There are some key areas that the city manager's office focused on as we move forward this year. Those projects include the Grand Hyatt Hotel, Campus Town Development, the Main Gate development as well. The city manager's office strengthened the partnership with MPUSD with continued work on the Safe Routes program, facilitated an internship student program with CSUMB, and created a community program to assist seniors, disabled, and low-income families while keeping their yards maintained through a program we'll be launching called the High Five program. The strategic goals for 2025 include continued efforts to secure water for future city development, creating a jobs training program, finalizing a general plan, and continuing to undertake programmatic enhancements to downtown. And again, just want to point out a few other things before we move along here with our budget. In the year in review, we expanded our public safety through our drone program. We were able to work with our flock safety program to have fireworks detection, sound audio detection, which we have been using since the beginning of the year. We'll be using it this upcoming 4th of July. We continue to work with our community enhancement specialists to make sure we're focusing on areas of need through our code enforcement division. We continued to update our general plan, continued progress with that. Completed multiple park projects. There was quite a few ribbon cuttings this year at parks. The Fire Station 2 design continues to be underway. And we've established and are moving for a robust IT department, which will bring us into the next chapter of cybersecurity and technology in general. We've established a formalized Seaside Water Action Team. Talked about the High Five program we'll be launching. We've hired our project manager, who's been working very hard throughout the year, as well as our economic developer. We've hired a firefighter recently and 2 police officers this past year. And again, the Grand Hyatt maintains one of our most prioritized projects among others, and we continue to see progress on that. And with that, I will pass this on to our acting city finance director to continue us through this budget session.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I do want to start the budget study session by also pointing out that we're pleased to present a balanced budget this year. Our operating budget is $48.2 million in revenue, with $48.1 million of expenditures, leaving us with $133,000 proposed as our budget surplus, with $4.4 million of fund balance committed to infrastructure. And I think the introduction finance presentation needs to be pulled up. Yeah. And I also want to repeat my thanks to the acting city manager, all of the department heads, and especially the finance team, including Juan Carlos Hernandez, who's here supporting the presentation tonight, for all their hard work in putting together this 400-page document. So with that said, we're pulling up a presentation now, which is going to be providing a high-level summary at this meeting. And the budget document itself contains quite a bit more detail if you want more detail. But if time does not permit, I would at least recommend reading the acting city manager's transmittal letter and the introductory analysis sections. And again, this is going to be a high-level overview of our proposed budget. Then we will go through each department individually, and then we will go through an overview of the CIP and the fee schedule, which is scheduled for tomorrow's study session beginning at 5 p.m. We have a lot to cover, and as soon as we get our presentation up, we'll get started. That's the correct slide. Thank you. Okay, so first I'd like to begin with a few proposed changes to the city's fiscal policy. The first proposed change addresses potential challenges to the city's use of trash franchise fees collections. Franchise fees are a fee imposed on certain businesses operating within the city. For many years, cities have defined franchise fees as a fee imposed for entrance or use of local government property or the purchase, rental, or lease of local government property. This definition has been challenged, however, in court. The challengers allege that the fee is not a fee at all, but in fact a tax. And if the courts ultimately decide that the fee is in fact a tax, the city would have 2 options. 1, prepare a detailed analysis demonstrating the nexus between the amount of the fee and the cost. Or 2, complete a Proposition 218 procedure establishing the fee as a tax. In order to better align the fee collected with the costs incurred by the city's trash collection and activities through a franchise agreement with Greenways, staff proposes amending the street repair funding policy to specify franchise fees collected from trash collection operations as the funding source for pavement rehabilitation project costs and the hotspot repair program, as these costs are a direct result of wear and tear from trash collection trucks. We have a second proposed fiscal policy update. We also want to update the street repair funding policy to increase the percentage of projected surplus at mid-year applied to streets from 25% to 50%, and authorize staff to apply this amount to streets operating costs in addition to streets repair costs. I will give more information about the reasoning for this proposed fiscal policy change after the long-term forecast is discussed at the end of this portion of the presentation. So this was just a brief overview of the proposed policy changes. Staff will bring a more formal written policy to be included when the budget document is finalized and considered for adoption on June 20th. Now we'll take a look at the actual numbers from the budget, starting with the all funds level. All funds includes not only our general fund, but also our special revenues fund.
Excuse me, Jessica, we had to figure out somewhere where we could see the numbers. And so,
Thank you. Okay, so all funds, we're looking at the all funds fund balance summary on this slide. All funds includes not only our general fund, but also our special revenues funds, which are funds which are restricted for specific purposes. Our internal services funds, such as our fleet maintenance and our IT internal service fund, our enterprise funds, which is the golf course and muni water system, and trust funds, such as the RDA, and custodial funds, such as the sanitation district. As you can see on this slide, our fiscal year 22-23 all fund balance was $80.7 million, projected for fiscal year 23-24 with $76.1 million, and for 24-25 we are proposing a $66.7 million fund balance. At the all funds level, we are expecting revenue in the amount of $80.8 million, expenditures of $89.8 million, which is a decrease in the all funds fund balance in the amount of $9 million. That decrease can be attributed to $4.4 million from the general fund capital improvement program and $2.9 million in FORA non-bond expenditures and $2.8 million in street operation expenditures. I don't think the clicker is working. Is it me? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So now looking at all funds revenues across the top of the next slide, you can see our actual revenues for fiscal year 22-23 were $68.2 million, projected for 23-24 were $64.7 million, and forecast for fiscal year 24-25 is $80.8 million. The chart on this slide shows 3-year comparison of our top 5 revenue. As you can see, the major revenue categories are largely flat, except for the category of grant revenue. We are expecting an ATP grant of $9.3 million to fund the Broadway Avenue corridor improvements, which is in the design phase for fiscal year 24-25. Another RSTP grant for $175,000 for street projects, and an application for a federal grant for $4.7 million for capital projects, which includes the San Pablo Bridge repair. Oh, that's working. Excuse me. Now, looking at all fund expenditures, fiscal year 22-23, all fund expenditures were $68.3 million. The projected expenditures for fiscal year 23-24 are $69.3 million, and the forecasted all funds expenditures are $77.6 million for fiscal year 24-25. And this chart is, again, a three-year comparison of our top three expenditures by category. Overall, we expect expenditures at the all funds level to increase 20.6 million or 30%. Out of this increase, 4.1 million comes from personnel costs, which are up 11% from projected expenditures in fiscal year 23-24. FERS costs increased from 6.1 million to 7.1 million. Services and supplies contributed 6.4 million to this increase, increasing 38%. This includes a $3.4 million well replacement project that is classified in services because it supports the municipal water system. This variance is also due to the FORA non-bond expenditures discussed earlier. The increase in all funds expenditures also includes a 9.1 million increase in capital outlay, or an 83% increase. This variance is due to a robust capital improvement program with a substantial amount of funding coming from grant funding. So that wraps up a high-level look at our budget at the all funds level. Now we will look at the general fund more specifically. This is the same chart I had for all funds. So if you bring your attention to the top of the slide, you'll see the fund balance trend for the past 3 years, and including the proposed 24-25 budget. For fiscal year 22-23, the actual fund balance was 44.8 million. Projected for fiscal year 23-24 is 39.6 million, and proposed for 24-25 is 35.4 million. On this chart, I broke out our operating budget from our non-operating budget. So looking at our operating budget located on the left side of the chart, we have 48.2 million in forecasted revenue against $48.1 million in expenditures, so that we have an operating surplus of $133,000. On the non-operating side, with the capital budget, we don't have any specific revenue for the capital budget, but we do have fund balance. So we are we're proposing to use $4.2 million of unassigned fund balance to support $4.4 million of capital expenditures. If you put it all together, in summary, we are forecasting $48.2 million of revenue. We are using $4.4 million of unassigned fund balance to fund capital expenditures with our operating expenditures of $48.1 million. That is a total proposed expenditure amount of $52.4 million, and that is with an operating surplus of $133,000. And before I move on from this slide, I just want to break down that $35.4 million fund balance. Of that amount, $8.2 million is a non-spendable amount. $3.5 million is restricted for our pension trust liability. Committed reserves include $2.4 million in the capital reserve, $4.8 million in the special reserve, and $7.2 million in the emergency reserve, and $7.5 million of committed reserve is in the form of a loan to the municipal water system. So the good news here is that all of our rainy day reserves are fully funded. The remaining amount is an unassigned fund balance of $1.7 million, which is the council's discretionary amount. Now looking at general fund revenue. Again, you can see the 3-year trend at the top of the slide. The actual revenue in fiscal year 22-23 was $49.7 million. Projected for fiscal year 23-24 is $46.9 million, and forecast for fiscal year 24-25 is $48.2 million. This chart shows a 3-year comparison of our top 5 revenue sources, which is property tax, sales and use tax, transaction tax, utility user tax, and transient occupancy tax. So here's a little bit more information, detailed information about our revenue trends. property tax, we are showing increasing 3% or $1.3 million. This is a slower rate than we have experienced over the last couple of years with the impact of rising mortgage rates. Home prices remain elevated, and Seaside in particular should see a benefit as homes in the new Enclave development are sold. Sales and use tax began to show a flattening out in the current fiscal year, and estimates from our sales tax consultant indicate that this trend will continue into fiscal year 24-25, with sales and use tax only growing a moderate 3%. Some of this increase can be attributed to the persistent elevated inflation rate above 2%, the 2% target rate. These gains may be offset with high prices curb consumer spending. Reports from our sales tax consultant also indicate a tapering of auto sales, which is the city's largest tax revenue category. Transaction tax is basically the same as sales and use tax. That's our local 1% add-on tax. Similarly, transaction tax is expected to only grow a modest 1%, so essentially flat. Transient occupancy tax is expected to continue to grow at 7% into fiscal year 24-25. This category includes short-term rental transient occupancy tax. The NIC and the Housing Fund splits the short-term rental portion of TOT revenues 50% in each fund. Those numbers are at a high level, but we don't expect this portion of TOT to continue to increase significantly beyond the current level. Utility users tax is expected to increase 4% due to increasing utility rates. So basically, we're expecting an increase similar to CPI. I will mention that there were some losses of one-time revenue, namely a $40,000 monthly extension fee from the Seaside Resort Development, which ended when they pulled their permits and for the development project. Overall, now looking at general fund expenditures, the trend at the top begins with the actual expenditure amounts for fiscal year 22-23 at $47.9 million. Projected expenditures for fiscal year 23-24 at $52 million, and forecasted expenditures for fiscal year 24-25 to be $52.4 million. This chart is a 3-year comparison of our top 3 expenditure categories, which are personnel services, services and supplies, and internal service charges. Overall, we are proposing a modest increase in expenditures of $392,000 or 1%, which greatly reflects staff's efforts to reduce expenditures in the face of projected weakening revenues. Personnel costs, which is the largest expense category, which is 75% of expenditures, but actually a little bit lower, 72% of if we include operating transfer expenditures. We did see an increase of $2.9 million or 9% for the budget proposed for fiscal year 24-25. This is despite the city's efforts to reduce costs by freezing 11 vacant positions. We still showed a 9% increase in personnel costs due to the 4% cost of living adjustment included in the bargaining agreements, in addition to a $1 million increase in pension liability costs. Services and supplies expenditures are budgeted to increase $484,000 or 5%. The year-over-year increase is largely due to the increased costs of supplies from inflation. To balance the impact of inflation, departments limited additional supplies and equipment purchases. Notable increases are also included in the continued contribution in Neighborhood Improvement Commission in the amount of $398,000, which is included in the general fund expenditures. Although the 50% contribution from short-term rental tax revenue to the NIC has been stable for the past 2 years, the actual expenditures may vary. So this category shows an increase because the expenditures we calculated at the time of publishing the document We're only 90,000 of what was allocated for 23-24. But we have since determined that most of the projects these funds supported during fiscal year 23-24 are underway, and we will roll forward the total budget that was allocated that previously. Internal service charges increased 689,000 or 29%. This variance came from increased costs of equipment and fuel for our equipment maintenance fund, augmentation of our IT staff, and increased costs of citywide software, and the impact of maintaining a 25% reserve for our internal service funds. The rates of our internal service costs are set to cover the current costs and maintain a 25% fund balance as a reserve. These costs increased were offset by a very unusual decline in the city's liability and worker compensation insurance costs. And let's see. I don't have transfers out listed on this slide, although they are noted at the end of this budget overview. But I will note that the transfers out of the general fund totaled 6.4 million. Out of that amount, 4.4 million is to support CIP projects that we talked about previously. But keep in mind, we have 1.9 million in operating transfers, in particular to stormwater fund operations. The stormwater fund does not have any funding source other than the general fund. So that is $1 million being transferred from the general fund to support stormwater. And then 398,000 is transferred to affordable housing fund. Again, that is 50% of the city's transient occupancy tax from short-term rentals and established per city ordinance. And we have the Catino Park debt service, which is $376,000. I did not go over department variances here because we're going to go over each department as we move through the budget study session. And we will discuss those variances at that time. And next, we'll take a look at our long-term forecast. The chart on this slide shows our long-term forecast. We included a 5-year of historical data for context. Then we have fiscal year 24-25, which is the proposed budget. Then we have 5 years beyond that forecast. Looking at the chart, the gray area in the back represents the fund balance in total. Expenditures are the red bar, the revenues as blue bars. There is an orange line running through this chart, and that is our rainy day reserve at policy level. The green line is the unassigned fund balance, which, as I mentioned, is the council's discretionary balance. New in the previous budget development process was a red line, which starts in 2026 and shows the amount we dip below our rainy day reserve policy levels if we stay on the trajectory we are now. Looking at our operations, we are expecting our operations to produce small surpluses over the next few years, but not at the rate to keep up with the amount the city is spending on capital projects while also maintaining the amount needed to fund the pension trust, streets operating costs, and rainy day reserves. I will also point out that this also includes an assumption of increased personnel costs if the city continues with plans to build a second fire station. I will also point out that while most of the assumptions have been carried forward from our estimated fund balance projected for fiscal year 24-25 with the proposed budget, this year I added the impact of a deficit in street operations, which is a result of the end of Measure X bond funding available. The Measure X bond fund since 2018 supplemented street projects and operations up to $10 million. This coming year, the city will need to look for other funding sources for street operations or reduce expenditures in order to reduce the impact on the fund unassigned balance. Looking at capital expenditures for the current fiscal year, we are projecting $22.3 million in capital spending, and 4.4 million in 24-25 is coming from the general fund unassigned fund balance. The model as we use it has an assumed 3.5 million from the general fund on capital projects going forward. This development progress has slowed and potential revenue in the form of TOT and sales tax increases from the Grand Hyatt Hotel was moved out a year and the expected benefit from this revenue is now expected to be realized in 2027. Main Gate and Campus Town also remain on the horizon and promise to increase revenues. Overall, it looks like the city will dip below the rainy day reserves as early as 25-26. A few ways the city can avoid dipping below the policy level reserves would be to decrease capital spending from the general fund. And there's two halves to that situation. The city can outright delay or limit capital projects or pursue more grant funding or focus on projects that already received grant funding. So during the budget development process for the fiscal year 24-25, a growing structural deficit in the streets operations due to the depletion of Measure X bond funds was uncovered and is being addressed in various ways in this proposed budget. In the long-term financial plan, put on the slide, part of the restricted fund balance that leaves 1.7 million positive unassigned fund balance does include the $2.3 million that is needed in the street operations fund. Street operations are partially funded by the highway user tax, which is projected to be $874,000 in the fiscal year 24-25. The remaining 1.9 million of expenditures and operations will leave a deficit in the streets fund in the amount of 2.3 million, which includes a starting deficit of 400,000. In other words, we have already started to feel the impact of this drop off in Measure X bond funds, even in the current fiscal year 23-24. So this next slide, and also included in the budget document, in a section on interfund transfers. Here we have the proposed transfer schedule, which provides some useful information about the flow of money across the funds. Funds are like buckets of money. Some of these buckets are filled from grant sources or fees, and some of these buckets need to be filled completely or partially by the general fund. So what are street operation costs? This is basically our street lighting, our personnel costs, our street sweeping services, debt service for the street sweeper, equipment, and an increase in internal service fund costs for fleet maintenance to support new equipment for streets. These are all items that would be classified as street operating costs. On this slide, I'm proposing an update to the budget document to explicitly include a transfer out of the unassigned fund balance to street operations to cover the depletion of our Measure X bond funds that has already taken place. And this is kind of similar to what we're already doing with the stormwater fund. Is we're transferring on average in this proposed budget, actually $1 million to support stormwater operating costs. Staff has also taken corrective action to start to reduce street operating costs by freezing a maintenance worker 3 position, which was assigned to streets. We will be exploring other measures to reduce street operating expenditures, explore other funding sources for street operations. And as was stated earlier in this presentation, propose a change in the city's fiscal policy to appropriate any available general fund surplus to the amount of 50% to also include street operations costs. So, and just a few final things for consideration. Our appropriation limit is calculated this year at $44.7 million. That's the amount of tax revenue that the city can collect and spend. The city is under the limit by $3.5 million. And then there's the fee schedule, which is also included in the budget document. This year, fees were updated to reflect a 4% increase in CPI, and that will be presented in more detail in the second study session tomorrow. And with that, that concludes the budget summary, and I'm available for questions at this time before we go into the individual department reviews.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
First of all, I want to thank you and the staff for all your hard work. I know that there was a lot of moving balls, changes, adaptations, leadership changes. Countless things happened to make this, by you able to bring this together, is very impressive, and I sincerely thank you. As I think I talked to all the department heads, you know, I look at this as the Bible for the city of Seaside. For me, this is not necessarily kumbaya moment. It's to ask serious questions about the impact it has to all of us, to our staff, and to our residents. As we go through this process, especially these questions here, staff or residents, I don't think will like my concerns, but they're my concerns, and for me to evaluate something of this amount of money, I think we need to at least open our minds to other concerns, suggestions, or opportunities. I have, as you all know, made you all aware of the questions I will ask. So most of you know, I have, based on the discussion, I've added 2 or 3 more based on your your wonderful presentation. But I did ask you in advance so that we could prepare, because we don't want to embarrass myself or yourselves by having to go through the book and all that. So that's my open thoughts, and then some simple questions that I ask every year. And some of them based on this year is different. And it's going to take time, and only on this section, I think I have the most questions. The personnel cost is 75 to 76% of the budget, depending on which page you're looking at. What is the consultant cost by dollars, and what percentage of the budget is that?
Oh, okay, yes, I had, that number for you. And, let me just also make sure I have the percentage amount. The dollar amount of consulting costs has actually been, very stable compared to the previous fiscal year. Yeah, so on an all fund level, we're tracking very close to last year with 1.6 million on the all funds level and 1.1 on the general fund level. So as a percentage, that's roughly
Yeah, ballpark's good.
2% of the general fund budget.
Okay, 2%. Thank you. It seems we are, and this could be for you, as you know, or the city manager, as he knows. It seems we are freezing in some very important positions that could impact development, public safety, and parks. They include, but not limited to, civil engineer, building inspector, police staff, park maintenance. Does the city manager or staff or you have a plan to expedite development to ensure public safety and maintain parks through increased revenue?
I think I'll defer to the acting city manager about the potential for increasing development so we can support our personnel costs and not have to hire or freeze so many vacant positions.
Through the mayor. Yes, to answer your question, the answer is yes. We are working very hard through our project manager, with our city attorney, our economic developer, to move forward on some of these key projects. I noted one of them, which is the Grand Hyatt. We also have Campus Town, which is one of our top priorities, as well as a main gate. And we're working very diligently on doing this. Can I say this is going to immediately correct some of the freezings? I can't say that it will immediately happen. But right now, going through our budget, we had to make these reductions, and we really sat down with each department head to try to be as responsible as we could to cut in areas that would not impact overall services. And in doing so, we felt that this was the most responsible and appropriate action to take.
Thank you. I know staff and yourself and city manager. We're looking at the initial budget proposals. And we received emails saying you're cutting 6%, 8%, back and forth changes as you go, as you did things. Is that the potential 6% or beyond? Was that the initial presentation by staff? And then as you got to the meat and potatoes of what the budget really is, then they had to go back and say, so it's based on a projected budget versus the reality of where we're at, I guess is my question.
Yes, we always begin our budget study session, or our budget development process rather, by meeting individually with each of the department heads, and we include the city manager and human resources in that discussion. And we take all the expenditures that the departments propose and we vet them and make sure that this is really a reasonable request. And then we put it into our budget development spreadsheets, and we have basically the expenditure amount that we're starting off with. And then we compare that to the revenues we're projecting, and then we make adjustments from there. This year, we started with $51 million in projected expenditures. And that we did go back to the department heads and request a 6% budget cut. And we made sure that that 6% expenditure cut in expenditures was reasonable and didn't reduce public safety or services. And we did find some departments weren't completely able to cut 6%. But we got very fortunate this year in that our insurance premiums had an unusual decline, and that resulted in a substantial portion of our expenditure reduction.
I was gonna ask that later, but since you hit that magic word, insurance costs were much, much less. I'm not sure, I don't remember how much less. But it seems, or you suggested earlier in our conversation, that we got lucky. This is not gonna happen next year. Maybe that's too simplicity of words. But in the future, next year budget or this year, or we need to be ready or to be proactive in doing something. Does that make sense? Or how can we do that to safeguard next year's budget? I guess, is that a fair safe question?
Yes, I mentioned that this increase is unusual because it gives us more of appreciation of how difficult it was to reduce expenditures, and that without this continued decline in a large portion of our expenditures, it's likely going to be a much more difficult process to achieve an operating budget surplus if revenues remain flat. But I will also point out that the decline in our workers' compensation insurance premium wasn't completely unusual, and I just want to give credit to the acting human resources, risk manager, director, and the HR department, because their initiatives to reduce workers' comp claims probably also contributed to the workers' compensation cost premium going down.
And maybe I missed it, so let me kind of. Do we have to do anything in order to prepare for next year as a decreased cost? I'm not saying we should or do, I just need to nice.
As far as what we can do now to prepare for potentially a more difficult budget development process next year is to, I guess, be mindful of taking on expenditures that may be recurring. I think that would be a good step.
Thank you. The city manager mentioned we're working very hard on numerous projects. They're not going to happen. I mean, we want them to happen as soon as possible to start bringing revenue so we could maximize services. I get that. And I appreciate all the hard work. But we do, I think in your comments, you meant tax revenues are flattening, costs are increasing. We are at 75 to 76 of the budget. Our salaries, 2% in consultant, that gets you to 78%. Give or take a percentage, that's close to 80%. I believe what I researched last year, we are a leader as far as staff cost versus the remaining 10, 15, 30%, depending on the city. And I'm not sure that's a good thing to do. Is there a percentage that this becomes I think it's personally, I think it's a serious concern now when you're spending close to 80% of your budget or 78% of your budget for staff. I think that's very serious because I think that impacts materials and supplies. I think it impacts parts, material, vehicle purchases, vehicle parts, building repairs, facility improvements. I think there's got to be some extra money to fix all the things that we want to fix. What is the magic number does that number become a serious concern?
Well, first I'll point out that for most agencies, personnel costs are going to be their highest cost category for expenditures in the general fund. And I will point out, I may need to correct that 75% are reported in the budget document because I didn't include transfer expenditures, which I went over in the budget summary. And when we take that into account, it is a little bit lower. It's 72%. But it's still an increase from last year where we were at 68%. And so our personnel costs are increasing as a share of our expenditures. Compared to other cities, the city of Monterey is at 74%. And they have a much larger budget. That's about twice the size of the city of Seaside's budget. And Pacific Grove is at 58%. And they all have a smaller budget than the city of Seaside. The county is at 64%. So I agree with the assessment that the city of Seaside is higher on average compared to some of the other cities on the peninsula. We're not the highest. And I think 75% is an area where we should start probably being concerned and taking measures to mitigate our personnel costs. And this year, the finance department hopes to learn more about our pension 115 trust and to see if there's an opportunity to start using some of those investment returns that we've been building up over the past year to defray pension costs.
So basically, to my understanding, we need to be concerned like now we are potentially at where we shouldn't go over to get to. We're at 70. I'm not sure for 72, 75, or 76. So for 72, where there's some leeway. For 76, we're
I don't.
concerned.
Yeah, I think probably next year, if it continues to go up, we should be concerned. But I like I said, I think we're really at 72%. And a lot of that increase could have been technical because we increased so much of our services and supply expenditures to achieve an operating surplus.
I feel much better hearing 72 than I read 75 or 76. Just a couple things that I didn't understand in the new questions. You said, can you explain the trash? I can't make it a question. Trash collections for payment related to rehabilitation of our streets, something along that line. Can you explain that? What are we doing? Are we getting money from somebody that fixed our streets? I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, this is, we're going to propose the budget as is, and these fiscal policies will be our guidance for development of the budget workbook for fiscal year 25-26. But in order to address potential litigation regarding the use of our trash collection franchise fees, we just want to specify that the amount we're already spending on road maintenance can be all we have to do is say that we're taking that amount from the fees we collect for trash franchise fees.
So we're gonna, and I apologize, we're gonna have to take, the suggestion is take franchise fees from the waste management company and use it for our streets because they're the ones damaging the streets. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly.
This is a couple of things that I didn't understand as well, and it's just, I think it's just, okay, we got rid of that one. Can you explain, you mentioned 4.4 million of unfunded funds. Will that have an impact, negative impact for next year? Does it have a negative impact for this year? Is it unfunded that we can do whatever we want? What part of that is?
That 4.4 million is our capital expenditures. That's the portion that's being funded by the general fund. And so it's not in our operating budget, and it's the only way to pay for that is to use our unassigned fund balance. And so the impact immediately in this proposed budget is a reduction of the fund balance, the unassigned fund balance, which is the council's discretionary fund balance. And if we continue on that trajectory, the next fiscal year will also have probably a negative unassigned fund balance.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. But so bottom line, do you use that $4.4 million of unfunded funds, or do you protect it for next year when it may be an issue? This is not discretionary funds, I assume.
It could be discretionary insofar as we can reprioritize some of the capital projects that are being funded by general fund support, which is what this $4.4 million is. And we can ask Public Works Director Nisha Patel to give more information about the general fund impact in her presentation on capital improvements.
So this is kind of tricky for me. That 4.4 million could be used for capital improvements, all good. Potentially, is that what I'm hearing?
That's what it is being used for in this proposed budget.
Okay, so that money is already allocated for whatever, a park or a baseball field, whatever it be.
For proposed projects.
Right.
So it's a new request, and there's still an opportunity to look at all these projects and reprioritize them and possibly reduce the general fund impact from our unassigned fund balance.
And this is my last one, I think. The 1.7 million discretionary account. Will that have any negative impact for next year in street improvements? Do we have to do anything differently? Do we have to massage it another way? If we use that money for if it's discretionary account, that means the council could say we want to build a new gym or whatever it be. But do we have to prepare for next year where that area is short?
Yes, in the next fiscal year, if we stay on this trajectory, I'm reporting that we're likely going to have a negative unassigned fund balance, which means we wouldn't be able to meet our rainy day reserves. And that assumption also includes the street operating costs. And so what the staff plans to do this year is look for other funding sources for street operations to reduce that impact on the unassigned fund balance and cut expenditures. And we also proposed a change to the fiscal policy to be using a larger portion of our projected surplus at mid-year to defray our street operating costs.
That's a good idea. Just one more question on that one. Is it okay to use that undiscretionary fund for whatever we want, or would it be wiser long-term to, for lack of a better word, put it in the bank, knowing the negative impact that will have for next year?
I think the best way to answer that question is if any of the $1.7 million unassigned fund balance balance, which is the council's discretionary amount, would mean that the projected negative unassigned fund balance for 25-26 would be more negative by the amount that we draw down from the 1.7 million.
So in a nutshell, it would behoove us to be very wise on how to.
I'm
Use those
gonna
funds.
jump in there. She doesn't need to give us that type of advice. It's for us
Okay.
to spend that money and not spend that money. And it's wrong to put her in that position to tell the four of us that we should not spend our restricted or unreserved accounts.
I just thought that was kind of important to be aware.
It
Ah.
it is, but that's what she's telling you. If you
Okay.
don't make changes,
Okay.
then, you shouldn't put staff in a position of telling the council what they should be doing with policy.
Okay, I think that, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Let's continue.
Okay, so now, following that overview, we're going to go through, the department budgets in more detail. Starting with the city council's budget. So that's the presentation labeled as departments. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's the exact correct slide. So as we proceed through each department, the format for the presentation is going to include a budget summary, which is going to be this very similar for each department. And then the department head or staff liaison, if we're discussing a committee, will give a brief overview of some of the accomplishments for fiscal year 23-24 and the goals for the proposed budget in 24-25. I will point out at this time that we'll discuss the individual work plans for the committees in the managing department's overview, even though the committee's budget is included in the mayor and city council's budget. Okay. So, yeah, that's the correct slide. So, first for city council, at the top, we have the number of full-time employees here on this table, which is held steady at the number of council members, 5. Then we have our department expenditures. I'll wait till we have the table back up there. Okay, thank you. So at the top of this table, there are the department expenditures for the mayor and council. Personnel expenditures are projected at 51,000. Services and supplies at 878,000. Our central service charge results in an allocation out to other departments in the amount of 166,000. So the total expenditures for the department are at 777,000. And down below, we show that the departmental revenues for the mayor and council. The only revenue source is taxes, so that 777 in expenditures are supported entirely by tax revenues. Most of the decline in services and supplies that is appearing to be the trend for the proposed 24-25 budget is really a technical decline due to a one-time legal settlement payment in the amount of $850,000 that took place in fiscal year 23-24. However, controlling for that, there was an increase due to the NIC estimated allocation of $398,000. The NIC, and I'll just repeat this to remind the council that the NIC has fully encumbered the 390,000 that was allocated in fiscal year 23-24 and has started work on all projects, so that amount will roll forward. This will be discussed in more detail in the department, the Building and Code Enforcement Department overview, whereas they're the managing department for that division. And now I'll invite the acting city manager to discuss some of the key highlights for the mayor and the city council's budget.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. The Seaside City Council's 2024 fiscal year was one of significant accomplishment and community impact. The council spearheaded numerous initiatives that enhanced the city's quality of life, safety, and economic vitality. One of the council's standout achievements was the reinstatement of the beloved farmers market, which celebrated its one-year anniversary just this month. The market has not only provided a vibrant space for local vendors and businesses, but also fostered a sense of community connection and access to fresh local produce. Addressing the critical need for affordable housing, the council secured requirements for 21 affordable dwelling units at 1620 Broadway through a density bonus agreement. This initiative is a significant step towards creating a more inclusive and accessible community. The Seaside City Council's accomplishments in the 2024 fiscal year reflect a commitment to progress, inclusivity, and the well-being of all residents. Through their various initiatives and policies, the council has laid a strong foundation for a brighter future for Seaside. And with that, we will take any questions.
Any questions?
Just,
Yes, Mayor Patel.
just one, in this area that discusses the commissions, and my question relates to, the Recreation Commission has a increase of 17,000. The Homeless Commission, and some of these numbers are approximate. Homeless Commission has 40,000. Our commission has $10,000 increase, totaling $67. I wish it was $67. $67,000 combined. Where the other commissions have the same dollars amount that, you know, within ballpark of what they've had last year. Why the significant increase when there is a budget and staff shortage of, as I heard earlier, 11 people? Why is there significant impact when we have such like as safe routes to school programs, the environmental program that was mentioned during the program? That they're not part of this thing. I'm just concerned about the significant impact in those areas, where their plans are. I know they will bring that forward, I assume, or not, depending on the ordinance. It's just $67,000 when you're short 11,000, I mean, $67,000. You know, hundreds of $1,000s for staff and streets and materials and supplies. It brings me caution.
Can, what I would like for us to do is ask the question.
Okay.
And then, you know, we have 2 days and then we can make adjustments. But if there's a question,
That's the question. Why are we, I guess, why is the significant increase when, why is the significant? It's that's cutting to the chase.
Would you like me to respond? So we establish in our budget development process that in all commissions that don't have a work plan will be budgeted $3,500 for department consumables and regular operations for the year. The only commissions that requested more than that amount had to have an established work plan. So those commissions include Art and History Commission, Recreation and Parks Commission, Homeless Committee, and the Neighborhood Improvement Committee. So I would ask that we wait until those managing departments present on the commission and discuss the amounts that they requested for their budget and to support the work plan at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
any other questions? Councilman Miller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the managing departments on the mayor and city council, one of the items is community firework event, 17,138 in 2023. Was that an event at the golf course or, but I wasn't on the council. I don't remember that.
I believe we moved the community fireworks events to the recreation department's budget.
I see. So that number wouldn't be on here.
No, we moved it out of the city council's budget and into the recreation department's budget. So, and the recreation department will likely be presenting at the study session tomorrow.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my other question was, this council, receives some dinners on on our council nights. Is that listed in one of these items?
Yes, I don't know which account it comes from exactly, but I will, I believe it's probably from, department, consumables, but, I can confirm that,
Well.
and get back to you at the,
There's no other place.
yeah.
So,
I do know that the meals are included in the city council's budget. Actually, it could be in the city manager's budget. So,
That's okay.
yeah,
I'm just curious.
it comes from department consumables, and I'll confirm for you when we reconvene for the budget study session tomorrow, which account that comes from.
And then my last question is on there's one item here for me, Councilmember Miller, 675 through activity, but that might have been a League of City event in Monterey, but I didn't attend that. But it's okay. I can talk about that another time. Just thought I'd put that on the record. Thank you.
Okay.
any other questions, comments? I think two quick things so we won't have to come back, but the dinners, but I think city manager, I think the cost of all staff dinners are in that, right, which may not be a good way of counting for it. I'm just saying, so it's not, so when the public looks at it, it's not just the council that's eating. And then the second thing is, we can talk about changing numbers later, because that's what I'm asking people to do, wait. But I don't see, if you take 12,000 divided by, 11 months, that's $1,000 a month, 2 meetings a month, $500. I don't think we're spending $500, but it may be a way to just actually budget for what we believe the cost will be and just pay the cost instead of just budgeting a number, but I appreciate what you guys did. And then the last thing is, just to be clear for Councilmember Miller, I believe that, 17,000 for the fireworks, it might have been when we did it downtown, Mayor Pacheco, red, white, and blue, because it definitely wasn't at the, definitely wasn't at the golf course, because we know how much that one cost, right? And so, just putting it out in the ether, that must have been the one downtown.
For 17,000.
Yeah, it wasn't at the golf course, we know that for 17.
That was 117.
But don't say that.
That's what it
But
was.
that was back in the day.
Yeah.
So I'm just wanting to give him the information.
Yeah,
so
that
we
sounds
don't.
about right, sir.
And then I do agree with some of the questions and concerns about the level of fundings at the commissions. But we appreciate the city manager and the finance director trying to facilitate their work plan, but it's for us to massage these numbers to get us all through a balanced budget or a more balanced budget. Okay, thank you so much. Please continue.
Okay, next we have, excuse me.
City clerk.
No, we have the city manager next. Oh, I don't. Could you to the next? I think the next two slides, actually. And then the next slide, thank you. So on the next slide, we'll take a look at the city manager's budget. Looking at the number of full-time employees for fiscal year 24-25, the projected full-time employees actually appears to have gone down from 5 to 4. but this is due to moving an administrative assistant into the city clerk's budget. And personnel services are budgeted at 804,000. Services and supplies at 64,000, capital outlay and debt at 10,000. Again, as an administrative department, the central service charges are here are negative. So that means they're allocating out costs to other departments for their department support. But outside the offset from central services, the expenditures were 878,000. But with an even larger contribution from other departments for administrative costs, the expenditures are fully covered. So it looks like in the city manager's budget, that they have a operating surplus of 178,000. And I'll point out that cost allocations are based on previous year expenditures. So we're applying a significant central service charge to the city manager's budget, which in a year of declining expenditures is actually exceeding the expenditures in that category. But if you take out this internal service charge and just ask the question, how much is being spent in the city manager's budget? It's 878,000. And included in that is a decline in services and supplies categories, which is visible on the chart here. And that's also, again, because of a transfer of a contract services we use for Volair to the city clerk's budget. So you'll see a similar sized increase in the city clerk's budget when we move forward. And now I'll turn it back to the acting city manager to discuss some of the highlights of the city manager's office.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. I spoke in the opening of some of the highlights that came out of the city manager's office. I want to just talk about something that we faced, which was a staffing challenge. And I want to just point out some of our mitigation techniques or actions that we took to kind of focus on working through that as well as our future. And the critical positions are as follows. We appointed an acting human resource director very recently. We've appointed an acting assistant city manager. We've appointed an IT director, and we've also appointed an acting finance director. Other key positions that you'll see as we go along the budget that are key for us to continue providing services and keeping us a very strong and vibrant city is to ensure that we work on filling the assistant public works director, also providing recreation department support for key positions, working on staffing and filling our building official, as well as a permanent finance director, also restructuring our chart to ensure that we have an assistant HR director and continue to hire firefighters and police officers to maintain public safety. And with that, I will take any questions.
Questions? Mayor Protem.
Just one. And we talked about it earlier. It's very rare we see salaries go down or cost of salaries go down. So so either up or down, I'm going to ask the question. The way I see it is $605,000 ballpark for fiscal year 2023. And then I see projected 774 for this fiscal end of this fiscal year. And then I see it drops down, let's say $150,000 to 523 for this fiscal year. Which is about $150,000. We just want to ensure, I'm sure we all want to ensure that we're covered for the cost of city managers in the future. So does that number, that magic number works? Because it just shows $150,000 decrease, and I just wanted to be cautious.
Through the mayor? Yes, and again, the larger portion of that was the Volair, our film crew that does a lot of our work, has moved into our city clerk's budget.
Okay, that's great.
Now the questions, please continue.
Okay. And now we're moving on to the city clerk's budget. On the city clerk's budget, the number of full-time employees has stayed constant at 2, even though I did mention previously, we moved an administrative assistant into the clerk's budget. That was not being shown as an addition here because we also froze, as part of our cost reduction measures, a communications and engagement specialist position. Personnel services is budgeted at $339,000, the increase reflecting just a reclassification of an existing staff member. Services and supplies budgeted at $442,000. Central services are negative here as costs are allocated out in the amount of $192,000 to other departments. And total expenditures then are $589,000. Of that amount, $100,000, which was previously in the city manager's budget, are used for contract services for Volair, and $175,000 was budgeted for election costs. And that's an amount that is provided by the county. Not the funds, but the estimate of the amount. The department has a few revenue sources in the form of fees and fines, and the remainder is supported by general tax revenue. And again, with that, I'll turn it back over to the acting city manager to discuss the city clerk's achievements.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Our city clerk, Ms. Dominique Davis, could not be here with us tonight, but she asked that I go over some of her highlights. During fiscal year 2023-24, the city clerk, public affairs officer made significant contributions to the city of Seaside with the production of the Seaside City News broadcast, ensuring residents have access to important information. Recognizing the need for inclusivity, they initiated and established Spanish translation services for city council meetings via Zoom, along with Spanish translations on the agenda. They committed to professional development. They provided training support to over 200 California city clerks at the Technical Training for Clerks Institute at UC Riverside. Their work extended beyond the city as they maintained strong intergovernmental affairs by coordinating with agencies like Monterey One Water, CSUMB, the Monterey Bay Football Club, and the Monterey Peninsula College. To enhance internal efficiency, they cross-trained 8 administrative assistants to clerk for board and commission meetings. Additionally, they authored the remote meeting participation policy, ensuring clear guidelines for virtual participation. Finally, they played a pivotal role in facilitating the process for 2 ballot measures scheduled for the upcoming November 5th, 2024 general election. And for the 2024-25 goals, 3 key areas: enhance communication and access, foster community engagement, and ensure election integrity. And with that, we'll take any questions.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one out. I guess now that I understand a little bit, I'll do it for clarity. Under salaries, the increase was basically you added a staff person there, and under contract services, the $100,000 increases for Volair. Is that a correct assumption?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Please continue.
Okay. Next, we have the city attorney's budget. In the updated budget document, we may make a adjustment to the position control list to show that the ESCA department is actually with the city attorney's management. But so the number of employees at the top of the chart here aren't reflecting our 2 full-time ESCA employees. These are the 2 full-time employees in the city attorney's office, the city attorney. And is it, like I said, administrative assistant, excuse me. Yeah. So at the top includes a summary of, our personnel service costs for the city attorney. We're at $506,000. Services and supplies at $626,000. Again, as an administrative department, central service charges are charged out as the city attorney provides legal services for other departments. Normally, there isn't a revenue source for the city attorney. However, at the time of budget development, we were anticipating a reimbursement of legal costs for the legal efforts to eliminate a home deemed to be a drug house. But we ended up receiving that reimbursement in the current fiscal year, 23-24. The total reimbursement was $177,000. We still expect further reimbursements for fiscal year 24-25 for other legal efforts in the amount of $100,000, which is shown as revenue in the form of fees, fines, and reimbursements at the bottom of this table. Otherwise, this department is supported by general taxes in the amount of $538,000. The variance in personnel costs is consistent with the cost of living adjustment of 4% and the city's increased pension obligations. The increase in services and supplies is due to costs associated with increased legal efforts from the city attorney's office. And with that said, I'll turn it over to City Attorney Damon to highlight the key initiatives for the city attorney's office.
Thank you, Ms. Riley, for that presentation. So just to clarify, it's the city attorney and one legal assistant is how my department is staffed right now. And fiscal year 23-24, we had several successes, as Ms. Riley pointed out. We received a favorable recovery of attorney's fees and costs in the drug house abatement litigation. We were instrumental in resolving a case, so that takes litigation off our table. And we saw the implementation of water documents to move the Ascent project forward, which is the project underway on Broadway. We have received the first recovery of funds for the water credit that were provided to that project to move it to the next level of development. In terms of future goals for next year, we have a few very basic ones. Continue providing advisory advice to all of the departments, defending the city in litigation activities, ongoing professional skill development for the legal assistant and the city attorney's office in general, and training on specific subject matters. So like Public Records Act training that we intend to roll out in the next fiscal year, innovative collection techniques for things like collection of fireworks, citations, and other kinds of assessment, other citation collections that can be legal. And with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one. Under legal services, we budgeted 200,000, rounding it off. Projected 2024 is 450,000, and then the request is $500,000. Can you just give us a mild overview of cost, insurance, lawyer costs go up, whatever it be, just so that there's clarity.
Yes, thank you for that question. As we are all aware, legal costs are variable. They depend on what may come down the pike in the future. So we are, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible in setting that number to address both the increased in costs and potential matters that might be coming down the pike.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the summary that you just gave, Ms. Attorney, there you mentioned that reimbursement from fines. I see that the fines, fees, and reimbursements here, 100,000. If I heard correctly, I heard that was for potentially, possibly future revenue that we could receive back from that one case. Is there another area where the fines from fireworks or whatever fines that we've accumulated are listed?
No, the fireworks collections are not shown under this budget or under this projection. This is this amount is based on a collection of cost recovery in an abatement action.
Is there another place in the budget that shows the fines that we've collected?
We don't have that specific revenue account broken out individually, but I believe it's included in the police department budget, but I'll have to verify that for you.
Thank you very much. And then my last question was, we have legal services and then legal services special. Could you maybe give a brief explanation, the difference?
Certainly, thank you for that question. So legal services generally are general legal services, whereas the special legal services are generally more department oriented. So like human resources, personnel things, that might fall under that definition of special legal services.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Please continue.
Sam, you wanna join? Okay, the next department we'll be looking over is the Human Resources and Risk Management Department. At the top of the summary table, we budgeted for four full-time employees. The risk management position has remained frozen in the proposed budget for fiscal year 24-25. An update to the position control list reflects a reclassification of the human resource analyst position to an assistant human resource director / risk manager. And the human resources director position remains vacant. Personnel services costs are budgeted at $687,000, services and supplies at $3.6 million. And keep in mind, this includes our insurance fund. And a negative amount showing administrative costs, which are costs charged out to other departments in the amount of $633,000. So total expenditures net to $3.7 million, and this amount is entirely funded by general tax revenue. Personnel costs are showing savings from freezing the risk management technician position, as well as a vacancy in the human resources director risk management position assumed for half the year. After increasing over the past few years from 15% to 20% on an annual basis, the city saw a decline in workers' compensation and liability insurance costs projected for fiscal year 24-25, creating a savings of over $200,000. This decline can in part be attributed as well to the Human Resources Department's successful initiatives to reduce workers' compensation claims. And with that, I'll turn it over to Acting Human Resources Director and Risk Manager Samantha Sacrani.
Mayor, council, members of the public.
You all use this. You can.
So I did want to highlight the 133,000 surplus expenditure was because of the last 3 months, we have implemented and revamped our return to work program, which has helped our workers' comp claims come down drastically, actually 21.74%. So what the program does, it helps those employees that are on the job injury placed on modified or full restrictions. We try to place them to return to work so that our costs and paying an employee that is not working will reduce, and that has also shown to have a return rate of 80% successful employees return from their on-job injuries. We are also revamping our Department of Transportation program, which went into effect May, will become effective July, which is their third quarter. We also will be starting back our safety committee program, which will also ensure the safety of all employees, which is always our main concern, which will also in turn help reduce costs associated with the workers' comp claim. So I do feel strongly that our numbers will either continue to maintain itself or decline further. And of course, we hope to be fully staffed before the end of the fiscal year, so. Any questions?
Any questions? Mayor Patel.
Just two, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you in advance because I just made them up as you were speaking. I think this is very important. The employee recognition program. In the dollars you're asking for more is not very much. Are we doing things now where employees getting recognized that for their services, or is it just the pins and whatever you do?
We have the employee recognition program, which once the employee hits a landmark 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, along with getting longevity pay, we provide them with a catalog and they can select their own gift, and the catalog ranges from depending on the amount of years of service. We also, in that amount, we would like to sponsor more employee recognition luncheons, breakfast, as well, and other type of all-inclusive employee parties.
No, I think that's my perspective. That's a good idea. Transportation, did you see something about a transportation service or something? Did I miss that?
Yes, so
What is that?
in the Department of Transportation, which is the acronym commonly used as DOT, and that what it does is all of our Class B drivers, including the school bus drivers, excluding firefighters that have a Class B license. We do pre-physical employment testing. Then we do random drug testing and annual medical and physical exams.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You said you guys are gonna start back up the safety committee, but I don't see anything in the budget for that.
It's not cost
It's
effective
not,
at
yeah.
all. No, the only challenge with that is that we would need department heads in order to fully appoint employees into
Yeah.
that task.
Yeah, just an aside, I think we'll do is make sure the city manager has some type of policy mandating the attendance to those things of that nature, participation and attendance. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Please continue.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next department is the finance department, and the numbers in this table include the IT department, which we haven't had an opportunity to carve out of our summary since we've recently made this organizational change. So I'm going to go over the numbers for the IT department, and the IT services director is here to present some of the highlights of the department at the end of this summary. So there's a few corrections I need to make on this table before we get started, so everyone is understanding of the numbers we're describing. And so the fiscal years at the top of the chart should be from 2023 to 2025, from going from left to right. And there's going to be another correction on the next slide. And so starting at the top where we normally list the number of full-time employees, that number should be 10, which out of, if we take in consideration the organizational changes to the IT department, out of that 10 proposed positions for 24-25, 7 of those positions are finance department personnel, and 3 of those positions are IT department personnel. Personnel costs are total to budgeted to total 1.7 million. Services and supplies are budgeted at 798,000, and capital outlay and debt are budgeted at 2.3 million. And our department revenues are many, so we included them on a second slide here so we can see the numbers better. And I'll just point out when we get to the enterprise fund, we did leave out the rental income for the golf course, but that won't impact the general fund surplus. It's that revenue is earmarked for bond defeasance. So for fees, fines, and reimbursements are at 958,000. Special revenues at 50,000. That's our PEG fee collections. That supports the audio and visual of our council meetings. Debt service funds So the finance department manages various debt service obligations at 798,000. Enterprise is a golf course, which I just mentioned, where we had a mistake in this table that will be updated with the final budget document that'll be considered for adoption. So we're not reporting 329,000 rental payment that is used to defease the 2006 golf course bond. And this amount is correctly reported, however, in the debt service section of the budget document, if you want more information about that bond. Internal services, which does include the IT department, and grants other revenue are 91,000, and the remaining 875,000 in expenditures is supported by general tax revenue. Now I will point out that while we're reporting the IT department again in the finance department summary table, we did recently do a reorganization where the IT department will report directly to the city manager. And in future budget documents, this department will be shown in the city manager's budget summary. I will also point out that the increase in personnel costs is consistent with the 4% cost of living adjustment and increasing PERS pension costs. The increase in services and supplies is due to rising cost of supplies and inclusion of $60,000 to complete an updated fee study for the city in fiscal year 24-25. And now I'll provide a little more highlights about the department's progress this year and goals for 24-25. So the finance department used to be two divisions, financial services and IT, and I've mentioned that enough, that we are reorganizing the IT department to report to the city manager. The finance services usually provides a broad range of support services to residents of Seaside, other city departments, and members of the council. And providing these services that support our community is really our priority. A large facet of that support for residents of Seaside includes the utility billing administration services for the city's 790 plus municipal water customers. Internally, the finance department also supports other departments by assisting in acquiring services, equipment, and supplies, and processing and documenting payments to vendors. Other services and responsibilities of the finance department includes financial management, reporting, budgeting, accounting, debt management, payroll, and auditing services for all of the city's funds. Above all, the finance department takes responsibility to ensure fiscal resources are accounted for in accordance with established procedures, and so that we can make informed decisions in a precise and prompt manner. We had a very successful year with many accomplishments. The department relocated to a new office located in a modular trailer outside of City Hall. We provided finance training to new non-finance department hires. We provided data for a municipal water rate study. We engaged in extensive cross-training within the finance department, and we received the GFOA budget award for the fiscal year 23-24 budget document. Our goals for fiscal year 24-25 include developing a budget in brief document, increasing the city's investment portfolio diversity, and issuing a RFP for services to perform a citywide fee study. And I'll turn it over to our IT director, Gary Bartlett, to provide more highlights about the IT department before we move forward.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, just want to give you a brief, quick overview of the IT department. Obviously, we provide the technical support for the city of Seaside, which comprises of approximately 150 full-time employees and 130 part-time employees. Of those employees, over about 6 city locations that we have our network spread over. Of that, we have about 225 mobile devices that we support, which are cell phones, tablets, laptops, and about 175 computer workstations and about 30 servers. We're currently working on enhancing the cybersecurity for the city with the current ongoing malicious actors that are constantly trying to infiltrate government organizations. We're constantly at risk So we're incessantly looking for better ways to protect the city's data as well as any of the internal infrastructure that the city has. So we've had quite a few increases this fiscal year, mainly due to a lot of the software budget increases from vendors. They've increased approximately almost 20% over a lot of our major softwares that we use at the city, well over the standard inflationary rates that we've seen. That's completely out of our control, but they're main critical systems that we're unable to switch to anything else. So we're also working on augmentating the IT department to increase staffing to, again, future enhance our protection through better services to staff, through cybersecurity initiatives, as well as other efficiency, technologies that we can make staff more efficient to have better public service as well. So with that, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one, and for the finance director. I noticed two questions, I'm sorry. There's a $70,000 increase in consultants in your budget. Can you explain why approximately? Yeah,
That is probably very modestly, including the cost of inflation, but the large portion of that is the amount we expect for an RFP for a comprehensive citywide fee study.
then my question on top of that, which I didn't ask, is currently let's say there's someone for a contract that does some work. They get a building permit fee, just use that. Currently, they get like a 2 or 3 or 4% increase based on cost of living and associated costs. Now we're looking at a study for potentially more return of dollars for city services. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, and we maintain this in our budget despite the 6% budget reductions that we accomplished. We took that 6% from other consultant services that we're going to have to delay for another fiscal year, but we wanted to be sure we included this because it's a revenue enhancing element.
Thank you.
What page was that at?
Okay,
My-
110,
Okay, and how much was it?
from 60 to 130.
Okay, right, that's,
Ballpark.
yeah, no, that's good. It doesn't make sense to just wrap it in consultancy. Couldn't it just be 70,000 for a rate study? I mean, one place we say we're gonna do one separately, and then now we're just throw it in the consultancy, and I thought it was a good question about, why the large costs, and if it's actually for a line item, then it might be better to make another line item. I mean, I know you got $1 million up here with already, but just some way that we can
Sure,
let,
is,
just a suggestion. We'll move on. I'll let you think
Okay.
about it. So I don't want to put more work on it. All right, if there's no other questions, yes, of course, Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the IT director, we use the group wise, is that under data communication?
No, it's under our software budget, 3102.
Computer supplies?
Yeah, it's computer supplies / software. Yes.
And do you think that's in the future, is there any? I guess I'm asking is the group wise like the modern? Is there a way, is there any anticipation of moving maybe to a different provider? Or
We've definitely talked about that. A lot of that is budgetary concerns because moving to another familiar service such as like Outlook, costs are exponentially more expensive. So that's just something we'd have to look at working into the budget in the future.
more than the
Much
200
more. yes.
much more than 205,000?
Well, no, the GroupWise alone is much cheaper than like an Outlook solution.
Oh, I see. This is the
Yeah.
total. Okay. Thank you
Yes,
for-
that's for all of our services.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Please continue.
okay, thank you, Gary. So I will point out that we have scheduled 3 additional departments to present for this first study session. That includes the economic and community development, followed by building and code enforcement, and then police. Last year, we took a break before building and code enforcement. So I just wanted to ask the council if they want to take any moments to pause or take comment.
You confused me there. 'Cause
Take a break or not.
no, they don't need to ask me. Do I want to think? I'll ask you guys, right?
Yeah.
But did you want us to do the other three before we got to building? Because the building is substantial, but I was gonna break it anyway, because it's been, this is kind of like the halfway mark, so if people want to. Let's go to a quick recess is that okay with you?
Yes,
Okay, this is a good time to take a break?
yes.
Okay, let's take a recess for a few minutes, sound of the gavel.
Oh, thank you.
Are we rolling? Are we recording? Thank you, sir. Okay, we're back from recess. Please continue.
Thank you. Oh, right, after the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. We left off with the department budget overviews, starting with economic and community housing and economic development. On this slide, at the top of the budget summary, we show the number of full-time employees has remained stable at 10 full-time employees since fiscal year 2023. And this includes staff in economic development, planning, community development, housing, and CDBG. Personnel services were budgeted at 1.7 million, services and supplies at 1 million, capital outlay and debt at 219,000. Internal service charges are 472,000 in support of administrative services from community housing and economic development. And on the bottom of the table shows the revenues. We have fees, fines, and reimbursements at 69,000, special revenues of 686,000, grants and other revenues at 88,000, and the remaining expenditures are funded by the 2.6 million general tax revenue. Overall, budgeted expenditures are expected to increase $1.3 million. The increase is due to the continuing successful operating activities in the city's housing program and community development block grant programs. Additional cost increases stem from consultant services related to the Main Gate development project and for other projects that include updating the city's zoning ordinance and performing a citywide parking study. And now I will turn it over to the Economic Director, Jose Bazua, to present further on the Economic and Community Development Department.
Thank you, Finance Director. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Jose Bazua, and I'm the Economic Development and Planning Director. Let me tell you who we are. The Economic Development stimulates business and development activity to provide employment and the revenue opportunities for Seaside. Community development aligns land use policies to meet the needs of the community. Community development block grant, federal grant funds are utilized for public service and eligible capital projects. Housing works with developers, and affordable housing matters promotes accessory dwelling units, affordable housing programs, and works to secure grant funding as available. Turn this over now to the housing manager, Alexia.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Alexia Rappaport, Housing Program Manager. And I am pleased to share that the Housing Division celebrated several key accomplishments this past fiscal year. First and foremost, we celebrated becoming the second jurisdiction in all of the county to receive state certification for our 6-cycle housing element. As a reminder, what that means, besides bragging rights for the city, is that we will continue to be eligible for state grant funding, and we will not be subject to a lot of penalties associated with not meeting that goal. So again, that's a really key accomplishment I'd like to highlight. Second, Seaside became the second jurisdiction in all of the state to issue a CalHome accessory dwelling unit loan, and that creates affordable housing. Again, another really key accomplishment. And the Housing Division also updated its pre-approved accessory dwelling unit plan set. So there are 3 plans available to community members in Seaside who wish to build an accessory dwelling unit, and those are now compliant with the new state building code cycle. Third, the Housing Division continued to support the Seaside Housing Collaborative. That's the nonprofit that the city established in 2021. And we will have a representative from that nonprofit tomorrow to present to the board in further detail, to the council in further detail. Fourth, the Housing Division continued to support the city's inventory of city-owned affordable housing. So we continue to provide property management support, continue to ensure that they're adhering to affordability requirements set forth by the state and the city's policies. We issued new leases and we worked really closely with the Public Works Department to ensure that key safety repairs were enacted. Lastly, we continue to work closely with developers on key affordable housing developments in Seaside, such as the Greater Victory Temple, the 21 units of affordable housing that are going to be built on that site. And lastly, we hired our administrative assistant in the division, so that's been a huge help as well. Looking forward to the next fiscal year, the Housing Division looks forward to implementing a rental assistance program with PLHA, Permanent Local Housing Allocation State Funds, that were approved by council in February. We're waiting to hear back from the state, but again, we would be issuing that rental assistance program in this upcoming fiscal year. Next, we look forward to implementing the goals outlined within our 6-cycle housing element, and we hope to do so with a REAP 2.0 grant from the state, pending the availability of state funds. We will continue to implement our community development block grant to fund key services and resources throughout the city, including fair housing resources. And lastly, we look forward to continuing to support the Housing Collaborative and other key housing developments within the city. So I'll give it back to Jose. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now I'll give you the accomplishments for planning. The planning department processed the general plan, the ordinance to approve processing efficiencies, process mixed-use project for the Seaside Market. They also processed the housing for Victory Temple, processed a new business at 510 Broadway, began working on the action plan, among others. Now for next year, process the zoning ordinance, process the climate action plan, continue to process new business applications, and process and review entitlement process for Main Gate and other large projects. Now for the Economic Development Department accomplishments. What we did is we increased business support with technical assistance to small businesses. We established a pre-development meeting to expedite projects. We streamlined certain big projects and created partnerships with other agencies. We also began the Surplus Land Act for Main Gate. We collaborated with property owners and increased business within the city. Now for next year, we intend to increase the city's marketing, foster new business relationships, initiate Main Gate development, identify and pursue development opportunities within the city. I'll take any questions there.
Any questions, Councilmember Garcia Arzola?
Thank you for that presentation. When I'm looking at what caught my attention was the increase in consultant fees across the board here. On page 121, item 1030, we jumped straight to 125 in consultant for consultant requests.
Is that the 50,000?
Item 1030.
Is that for housing?
On item 1 on page 121.
That's the same question.
So are you talking about the planning consultant costs?
Yes.
125?
Planning zoning, yes.
Yes, on page 121.
On page 121, yeah, we have 125,000
Yeah,
for
we-
consultant costs.
Well, since the general plan was approved on April 24th, we're gonna need a consultant because we're gonna have to look at now at the zoning of the map, the ordinance zoning. We're also gonna have to look at any entitlement that comes in for other projects, and those are specialized as fields that we need. In order to move projects along fast, sometimes we need to hire. So that way, as the city manager said, we're trying to look at every avenue that we have in order to keep moving these projects. And sometimes we have to rely on consultants so they can take the burden of that and then bring it back to staff. And that way we can work together and then iron out the issues that we have.
Is that something that staff is not able to do in-house?
Sometimes for these larger projects, it's very convoluted and sometimes we don't want to risk. Sometimes not looking at parts that we missed for whatever reason.
Okay, that just seems like a huge jump. And then on page 122, item 1030 again, we're requesting 150,000 in consultants for economic development as well. And then on page 123, community development block grant, we're requesting 45,000. So these are just numbers that just caught my attention as to why the dramatic increase. Economic development, I know that one we had requested as a council, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. But the one that I really wanted a clear answer was on planning and zoning and community development block grant as well, page 123.
Yeah, the planning and zoning, the 125 was for that, so we can keep moving on the zoning, on for the map, for the ordinance, any other entitlements that are coming down the line that we see.
Okay, it just got my attention because you said I didn't really get a clear answer. Can we do it in-house or can we not do it in-house? Or like, is there a need for the 125? It just seems like a huge increase for us.
The answer is yes, there's a need.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, that was a great question because I had it on my notes too, so I appreciate that. Page 120, there's a consultant and it's gone from let's see, is right, from $7,000 to projected 165 for 2024, and now it's at 315 for the administration on page 120. Can you share thoughts on that?
Yeah, that 315 is shared by different department, economic development, housing and planning. And one of the things that we see coming down the line is main gate. So we want to be ready for that. Environmental studies are going to happen with that. Any other entitlements we have to do in order to get that project underway. So it's a massive project for 350. It sounds like a large number, but when you really look at the scope of that and what we're trying to do, we're trying to squeeze out as much as we can so we can maximize the use of that area. And main gate for us also not only means the property next to the party, but we're also looking at the property to the south of that and any other properties within that area.
And this is, I guess, back to the mayor's point, like a while back, would it be wiser? Could it be wiser to allocate those funds in the appropriate areas rather than leap them under one basket of the administration? So if some of that money is more for, I don't know, economic development, or some of it's more for planning and zoning, rather than put a catch-all under administration, would that make sense, I guess is my question. Right now, it's under one basket, rather than all being in one basket, be wiser, would it be wiser to balance it out into the other areas where you be actually using that money? If not, it's okay, I'm just curious.
The reason we have it there because we know we're gonna be using that sum. We just don't know how much of it and where, whether it'll be more in planning, more in economic
Okay.
development. So we just want to be ready, so when that time comes, we have the resources to make it happen.
Then, again, I didn't forewarn you this question, but you made it in your presentation. Seaside Market, you said you did something for Seaside Market to move it forward. Are we moving forward with Seaside Market, or is that in whole?
It went through the entitlement process, but right now it's between the developer and the owner.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we did our due diligence.
That's correct.
Okay. And then it was meant, and then this is another question that I didn't forewarn you, but you were talking about housing and all the work, and we're second in every area is and all that kind of stuff. And you also mentioned Victory Temple as a 21 housing. Are we closer to seeing people in houses, foots on the ground, however you want to term it, as far as physical sites being developed, be it Hillview Street, be it Canyon Del Rey? Are we closer to seeing actual people moving into space other than just the to be nice, the paperwork movement to get those things done.
I hope so. I think the city's doing everything that it can to facilitate the development. And I think achieving, the housing element, that's a really clear policy signal that creates an environment for that. And the general plan, I mean, I can't speak to that. That's a planning matter, but I do think that that's a crucial component of, again, facilitating more development. And then again, the housing collaborative, all of the work that's been put in there, I think it's all moving in the same direction.
Thank
Mhm.
you. In the planning and zoning, there is approximately $200,000, depending on how you look at it, in salaries. So the initial budget was 263, the 2024 projection was 204, and now it's 478 ballpark, 1,000 for. Can you share insight into that?
That's a very good question, Mayor Pro Tem. The reason it was an increase because we had the community development, economic development manager, Andy Merrick, who used to be paid out of the economic development budget. Now he's been reclassified and he's being paid out of the planning budget. So the economic development budget for salary went down. And the planning budget for salary went up due to Andy Merrick's being switched over.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I think Councilman Arizona may have asked the same question. I didn't sure. I got on page 122. Did you already answer the $100,000 budget increase in consultants? And on page 122, did you already answer that? From 42,000 projected to 150,000 this year. Did you answer that already?
Yes.
Okay. Then my last question is on page 124. There's a 40,000 budget increase in consultants and the projected was 10,000 for the consultant and the merge housing, I believe. So therefore it's now at $50,000 and we only projected to spend 10,000 last fiscal year.
So the housing division has been notified that the city would like to pursue more development, and that will likely include some of its city-owned sites, which have units that are occupied. And so that will necessitate specialized consultant services pertaining to relocation. And relocation is a highly complex process. I'll be blunt. I don't know how to carry. I don't want to touch that. So I think if we have that support, it'll ensure that the city is able to carry out that process, by the book and keep us in a good place and also assist with that development should it happen. So that's why we put that 50,000 there.
So just help me out a little bit. So that's basically moving people? Is that what I hear?
If the city chooses to develop upon some of its city-owned sites that currently do have units that are occupied, then that's when the relocation process would be initiated.
And we could do that this year, this fiscal year.
Potentially.
Potentially, that's all I'm asking, yeah. I think that's it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Miller.
Yeah, I don't really have a question. I just do have a comment that I'm a little bit concerned with as my colleagues have mentioned, about the consultant fees, and we're up to like 700 and something thousand in consultant fees in this budget. So, that was my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, City Manager, I think probably what we need to do is, as it relates to these specialized duties and responsibilities and occupations, I think it may be a good object for the council to hear if we had to pay an employee to do that, would we have to hire someone else? I think we keep saying, these consultant fees are so much, but they're because you don't want to hire an employee that just does that. And we need to show the community that if you had to hire someone to do that job with the salary and benefits, and it's kind of hard just to hire somebody for a year, if that makes sense, right? What would that cost be? Because really, these are salary savings. And then one thing you said, Alicia, that the complexity of doing relocation, you don't want to do. You kind of said it's, jokingly, it's not that you don't want to do,
Right.
it's that
I don't
You
have the
don't have the
skills
technical-
needed
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah,
kind-
I mean,
yeah.
right, and no one does other than the niche market that's
Mhm.
there for that consultant that knows how to do it without getting sued. And it is a process, and if the council wants us to take advantage of some of that land that we have people on, then we got to make the hard decision to say, yes, do it. And then there's people that does it for you, so. I just, there's two things. First of all, before I forget, there was a quick note where, well, for me, I made a note. Thank you so much for your hard work on the housing element. Some people don't know exactly how much work and how important it is to get the state to sign off on you. And I think for our first go around, right, it wasn't given back to us to say, answer some more questions. So that's a lot of work went in there, a lot of conversations back and forth with the state. And I know you didn't do it alone, but you're the housing manager. So I want to just thank you and everybody else that worked on that housing element. Then for I think at the Economic Development Office itself, down there, Jose, for travel, meetings and travel, you have 0. And I don't think, in business development program, you have 0. And I would just ask the council to think about that where, we don't want, my opinion, we don't want our economic development person sitting around in the office. That's not what the position was put there for. We want that person out and about. If that means that person has to travel to some conferences and travel, in state to some places, then we need to support that and we need to fund that. And so hopefully that can get done, because we don't want to look up and then to get him out to these conferences and places, it has to come out of somebody else's budget. My thoughts is that's our economic development need to be out there shaking hands and meeting people and bringing economic development to the city, not sitting back waiting for people to come to the city. All right, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Any more comments you guys have, or are we just going to ready to continue?
I'll make one more comment, is the 28th of June. On June the
Is
28th,
that mic on? And could you speak into it? We just can't hear you. Like,
June the 28th? No, it's not working, I guess. All right. June the 28th will be the unveiling and the lighting of the tree. We'll be out there at 4:30. As of this week, by Friday or no later than Tuesday of next week, the sign will be placed there. And then the following week, the landscaping will be on that area. So the sign will be on, the lighting is done, and the unveiling will happen on the 28th. The sign and the tree will be part of a marketing strategy that we are working on with with other agencies. And then on June the 28th, I'll bring forward what's been happening on Broadway and give the vision that the city council has been looking for and what we've been working on in the economic development department.
just for the rest of us, what is the tree? I mean, you have to give us a little bit more. Maybe some people listening to this, is that the one on Broadway?
Good question, Mayor. Yes, the one on Broadway and Del Monte. The one in front of Jose's Restaurant and in front of parking lot number 2.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, we have a wider audience. You just said the tree will be lit.
Yeah.
We got a famous tree out front, right? So they may be a little confused, but thank you for all your work. And I think we look forward to the information you will be sharing when you share it. Anyone else, any questions? Oh, yeah, of course.
On page 122 under economic development, business development program, can you just give me a rough refresher on what the business development program entails for people that are on the line? That's item 4203.
What we try to do in the business development is we do a lot of one-on-one. So that's why you'll see us a lot. Sometimes we'll walk from Del Monte or Fremont or Broadway. We'll meet with the businesses. Sometimes we'll assist them and point them now that the we know we'll try to put them to finance or we'll either to SBA or down, now that they opened up the facility down in the Chamber of Commerce in Monterey. So they have resources. We'll tell them what is the issue they have, and we'll try to provide that. At the same time, we're trying to be creative with what we have with our resources in order to see, not only give them the information and verbally, but also point them out with links and say, look, this, you can look at this option over here regarding financing. Do you need marketing? Maybe you need to go into this area over here. So it really depends on the business development. So we're trying to be very creative and responsive and flexible depending on what the challenges the business are facing.
So does the funding go to help them?
We're trying to develop a program right now for that. And the answer is yes. So it's not a loan program. It's too small. So we're trying to develop that program with that money.
Like a startup guiding program is what I'm,
Kind of, yeah.
okay, because with the Small Business Development Center just opened in Monterey,
Mhm.
which is meant to help our jurisdiction as well. So I'm just thinking, are we mimicking sort of what they're doing over there?
No, so sometimes they'll have a program and we'll take, for example, marketing. Right? And they'll go so far with the marketing. What we try to do is try to gap that. So if we have a program regarding marketing, whether it be they say they need to establish some sort of banners, flyers, where they can go, we got a Monterey sign here. Maybe we can help them out with this funding. So that's something we're developing at the moment, whether it be a loan,
Alone?
could be,
Okay. Because that just, because I don't see any funding for the facade improvement program.
The reason we put funding the facade improvement program, it was very difficult for people to take on that program because they had to pay prevailing wage when they take this money. So we're trying to revamp that. So how can we bring that back, and how can we make it more feasible for some of the business owners?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mayor Protem.
Just, and maybe it's my eyes, under the business development program, I don't see any dollars budgeted. And so maybe it's just my vision, but I don't think there's there. So if we're gonna do it, do you need for help?
Yeah.
I don't see any money budgeted. We need money budgeted, I guess, or.
Well, that's what I said, but I stopped her from answering, and then when you said it, I was wondering, where did you see money at?
Oh, good, because I thought it was just me.
But we'll come on the back end if you guys think it should be,
yeah,
some money should be in there. But I don't know how we get to a loan program. So I'm just speaking out loud. Let's say whatever you guys want to do. Is there any? Okay, please continue.
Okay, moving to the next department. Thank you. Oh, I forgot the commissions. Excuse me. Excuse me, before we move on to the next division, we have a few slides here for the Planning Commission, C-Jobs, the Commission on Jobs, Opportunity and Business in Seaside, and eventually the Environmental Commission.
Before we get started, I think they're in our city council tab.
Yeah, so if you want to see the detail tabs, they are on page 83, and I will point out that these three committees that are under Community Housing and Economic Development didn't ask for anything beyond the standard $3,500.
We got, I just want the council to be able to see in their packet where we have to go back. So please continue.
Okay, So for the planning commission, we've updated the commissioners. As I said, they've been doing a fantastic job in moving projects forward with the entitlement process. So they just have not requested any more funding. Our staff liaison is Andrew Merrick. Next slide.
You guys have any questions on that? We'll just,
Planning? No.
yeah, just,
No, planning,
Okay.
no.
all right.
With the C jobs, that's been a little bit hard to get off the ground simply because we haven't been able to get a quorum. We've only got 3 commissioners, so we're trying to get a 4th one so we can have a quorum there. So that's where we're trying to work with in order to push some of the ideas that we have, especially some activities we want to do on Broadway through C job so they can make their recommendations to the city council. So that is a difficult one simply because it's difficult to get a quorum. Any questions?
Any,
Just-
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, that more falls in your, economic development. I see that potentially having the most need for funds off the top of my head without researching this, because they're trying to help create, and correct me if I'm wrong, businesses, they're trying to reach out, they're trying to potentially go to other areas to see what we could bring here together. So what we're saying is to do those things that they've been commissioned, if that's the correct word, to do, to broaden the tax base, to broaden community needs. What we're saying is based on they're not having a full whatever, or they staffing or commissioners, we don't think their services, that area needs more love, more attention, more concern. Under C jobs, if I'm speaking correctly. It's only $3,500, and that one to me seems, I see planning as a lot of paperwork, a lot of study, a lot of research, a lot of stuff like that. I see commissions on providing jobs and opportunities and enhancing the area as potentially could be more a need to have the opportunity to reach out. And the environmental, that's been a kind of tough commission recently, so I understand that the challenge, but C jobs, we're okay with that, you think, for the future and getting new members and whatever, all the things, there's a huge list of goals, I believe, under C jobs in order to accomplish what they need to do. Or what the city wants them to do. So that dollar amount you think can meet the goals of that commission
For now, yes.
for this fiscal year, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. For the Environmental Commission, this one has not had a quorum in the last, believe, 6 or 7 months. So the same is that there's not enough people to form a quorum in order to get this commission off the ground.
Any questions? My only comment, as relates to those, I've been talking with the city clerk for the last, 5, 6, 7 months here, trying to make sure that we did have at least a quorum in the last 2 mentioned commissions, but it's so hard. Me and Mayor Pro Tem, we take everybody that virtually wants to get into those commissions and put them on there, but I don't know what happens when they get there and they see the work or lack of work, but it's kind of hard to have work if you don't have a quorum. And that's a long way of saying, I'm gonna bring to the council sometime here soon, the reduction in some of those commissions. So the people that want to work can meet and work. There's no requirement to have 5 people. There's no requirement to have 11 or 9 people. They're very much advisory. And what we want is a sense of advisory and a sense that the community can come down and put some of their thoughts on the agendas of these bodies. It doesn't have to have our the participation level that we assume that will be there when we impanel these bodies, right? We wanted 11 people in environmental to because it's just one a voice from everybody. But if we can't keep a quorum together, then we have to do our responsibility, which is reduce that number. All right, and so that'll come after a while. Please continue.
Yep, that's it. Thank you for coming back down. Okay, now we'll move on to the next department, which is building.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got one more question. Well, whoever can handle the question about the homeless committee. And so I'm trying to,
The homeless committee is in the recreation department, and that'll be presented with the recreation department's budget overview in tomorrow's study session.
right here it says,
It used to be in the fire, and that
You want to
is
leave it?
a correction that we need to include in the budget document when we return tomorrow or on the 20th, that the managing department for the homeless committee is the recreation department.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next slide shows a table summarizing the budget for building and code enforcement. At the top, we show a decline in positions for the proposed budget from 7 to 6, which is due to freezing one administrative assistant. One building inspector position will also remain frozen for fiscal year 24-25. Project personnel costs are increasing consistent with the increased cost of living adjustment and pension costs at 1 million. Services and supplies are budgeted at 260,000 and capital outlay and debt is budgeted at 35,000. Internal service charges are 203,000. Revenues for building and code enforcement are projected for 1.2 million for fees, fines, and reimbursements. The remaining expenditures for this department are supported by general tax revenue in the amount of 331,000. A couple of notes. Personnel costs, this increase is in line with a 4% cost of living adjustment and increased PERS pension costs. In addition, the variance from the previous year is also explained by a vacant admin assistant position that's expected to be filled in the proposed budget. So there were 2 admin assistants for this department, and only one has been frozen, and one was vacant in fiscal year 23-24, and we're budgeting filling that vacancy in fiscal year 24-25. Services and supplies increases are due to increased computer software costs and subcontracted work expenditures. Now I'll give this over to Project Manager Adolfo Gonzalez, who's overseeing the building and code enforcement departments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Adolfo Gonzalez, City Project Manager and Acting Building Code Enforcement Manager. The Building and Code Enforcement's primary responsibility is to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of all Seaside residents and visitors. Our approach reflects a fundamental respect for individuals and property rights. The department oversees adherence to all applicable building codes regulations in order to ensure the safe occupancy of all residential and commercial structure within the city of Seaside. The permitting, plan review, and inspection process helps us ensure the health, safety, and well-being of all who visit and live in our community. Code enforcement is responsible for responding and abating code violations. Unabated violations can pose serious threats to the public safety, and to help prevent and minimize the effects of structure fires and other hazards, our staff strive to educate persons about regulations and provide options to remedy code violations. Where abatement of public nuisance or other violations cannot be achievable through voluntary compliance, our staff is required to heighten enforcement strategies to abate the nuisance through legal remedies. This past fiscal year, the building division has issued 509 permits, conducted 2,129 field inspections, And some of those current projects include the Ascent, the Enclave at Bayonet Golf Course phases 3 and 4, the Grand Hyatt Seaside Resort Hotel, and accessory dwelling units. Building Division currently has two vacant positions, which include a building inspector and a chief building official. The Code Enforcement Division in fiscal year 23-24 opened 1,127 cases and closed 665 cases of the 1127. In addition of the 1127 cases, 21 of those cases were on Broadway Avenue since January of 2024. Of those 21 cases on Broadway Avenue, 13 were closed, 8 remain open, and 21 of the 17 cases that were open on Broadway Avenue, 17 were complaints and 4 were proactive. The majority of these cases on Broadway are typically for window coverings such as tint, signs and decals or graffiti. The goals for the upcoming fiscal year for the department include full implementation of SmartGov and working with the finance department to conduct a fee study and update the master fee schedule. Begin digitizing hard copy documents and plans, continuing education for our code enforcement officers and our administrative staff, as well as certification, and of course, the recruitment of a chief building official. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any question? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just two. And this one, first question may or not be under your responsibility, but at one time, there was a part-time, and there still may be, a part-time staff person that would go around and help with the code enforcement as far as high grass, litter, whatever it be. And they would go through different parts of this section, and it'd be probably before your time. Daily, I gather, and report that information to the court enforcement, and then it would be followed up on. Is that under your umbrella? I guess that's a good one.
That is correct. That's our code compliance specialist.
Okay, so that program is still going on?
That is correct,
Okay,
yes.
that's good. I've been told by the community that you have a really good subcontract building inspector that goes around, building inspector that checks out and works with the different businesses. But then I see you're short 2 building officials, however you title it. There's a lot of ADUs going up, a lot of impact on, I assume, a lot of impact on new businesses opening. I'm sure our if building inspectors are very hands are full and people want their business or their house checked out, not only tomorrow, but 3 days before they ask. The impact, what is the impact? How serious? Before with 2 was an issue back a few years or even last year. Now you're missing 2. How does that hit you? How is there any kind of, I know there's an impact. Maybe you can discuss that.
Yes, so we currently have 1 building inspector who is responsible for conducting all of the inspections within the city of Seaside. In addition to that, we have brought on board a third-party chief building official, a consultant.
Right.
Who assists with some plan check, but also conducts inspections. So they are fully certified. Between both our internal inspector and external inspector, they are both at this time able to conduct a lot of these inspections that are necessary. we have retained the services of another consultant firm that will allow us to bring in an additional inspector when we need more assistance.
So what you're saying, you're meeting the needs of the residents and the businesses with the current staffing level. And a full-time one or two would not necessarily be warranted.
Actually, what I stated was that with our, we have one internal or one
got
city
that.
employee who's a city employee. We have a third party or a consultant.
Right.
His chief responsibility is as the acting chief building official. He has stepped in to assist our existing inspector in conducting additional inspections. Are we fully staffed to take on to work on the backlog of inspections that we have and the future inspections that we will need to be conducting within the next several months? No, we are not. We do need and require additional staffing, additional inspectors, and additional consultants to assist us. There are several projects that are.
Oh, wait. We want to stay with the budget.
Okay.
And we can get to the position control list later, but I think he just asked a just clear question. Do you have all the people you need now, or are you saying you need more people? I mean, just very clear.
Be honest.
He's been honest.
Yeah.
Just very clear question.
We don't have all of the necessary staff that we need.
And are you re-recruiting for those are not the positions we're freezing, right?
One of the inspector position is one that we are freezing.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right, continue.
So, I'm also the staff liaison for the Neighborhood Improvement Commission, and the purpose of the NIC is to make recommendations to the city council and advise the council on matters pertaining to general improvements of the neighborhoods. The commission is fully staffed with, and these are the current projects currently in progress that the commission has recommended to the city council this fiscal year. I believe all of these projects are currently in progress and will be carried over into the upcoming fiscal year. They are in the process of beginning to work on next fiscal year's work plans, and should have that completed within the next 2, maximum 3 months, and will come to the city council for recommendations. As you can see, currently there are 14 projects that are currently in progress, and some have been completed. 2 have been completed on this list. Number 1, which are the 3 picnic areas at Cotino Park and Fernando Park Walkway, which is number 9. Those projects have been completed. Of their total allocation of $402,000, the total expenditures for these projects total slightly over $390,000.
Any questions? Councilmember Miller, then the mayor pro tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we've been going back on to page 82 on the commissions, for the Neighborhood Improvement Commission has listed here, 2023 actual neighborhood improvement, 47,919, but I thought that they received closer to 350,000 on page 82 of the book packet.
So, I believe, so we don't have the actual budgeted amount, we're showing, for 2024. So that's actually something I'll look up, very quickly right now. But I believe the budgeted amount for fiscal year, 2023, 2024 was 402,000, and 390,000 has been encumbered for fiscal year 23, 24, and will roll forward. And yeah, I can confirm that right now. The 50% of the short-term rental taxes that was projected and included in the original budget was $402,959. And of that amount, 390,000 is going to roll forward. And for fiscal year 24, 25, we're projecting $398,000.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm not quite understanding this, for 23 actual, it says 460, 769. Are you saying that's the difference between the amount they got and the amount they encumbered with projects? Is that the difference?
Where are you seeing, sorry,
Page 82 underline 7169.
and I think I see something that needs to be corrected. The adjusted budget in for fiscal year 2024, which is just showing $101,786, was determined at the time that we weren't confirming that the Neighborhood Improvement Committee had started all the projects that they appropriated funds for. So now it's turned out that they did start most of their projects that they allocated out of the 402,000 that was originally projected. They allocated or started projects that they allocated for $390,000 funds. So the correction to the document will show for fiscal year 2024 the adjusted budget of the projects that have started and have rolled forward, which is 390,000.
390,000. And then what about fiscal year 2023 actual? It has actual 46,769. That seems.
Okay, sorry, I see the number. Yeah, so when we first started the short-term rental program, I believe it started in 2019. And the amount of revenue we've been receiving in the following years was a lot more than we expected. And I think we took some time to get timely approval and recommendations from the neighborhood committee to encumber all those funds and start projects. So I think the actual spending for fiscal year 22, 23 actually is 46,000. And that's when we came to an agreement that if the projects that we allocated funds for didn't start, we would liquidate that back into the general fund and we wouldn't roll that forward.
Okay, thank you for answering that. So basically, the 46,769 is what was given back into the general fund that the NIC didn't encumber. Am I understanding that correctly?
What that would have actually been was, that was the amount that was actually used and what we budgeted for that year. And just to give you an idea of, I guess, the flow of the short-term rental funds, in that year, we had projected $257,000 would be 50% of our short-term rental revenue. And of that amount, they only had expenditures for projects that had started for 46,769.
Okay, I guess I'm okay with that. I'm just a little bit more confused, but okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, this may or may not help. I think it will help, but as this program developed since 2019, They were and it was assumed by staff and everybody else that they didn't have to give you what they wanted until later in the fiscal year. By that time, it was too late to do the projects. Year before fiscal year, the time they get into the project size wouldn't allow it to get done in a timely fashion. So they learned a lesson to now submit their items by November, which they did this year. And that's why also a lot of these items, I'll use $70,000 for the entryway on Delray Oaks. Has not been approved, been blessed and all that, has been moved forward. The bicycle racks, again, it's been ordered, it hasn't been paid for. The benches on on General Moore Road, it's ordered, not paid for. So a lot of that stuff is a learning curve by them. And now they got it where you gotta get the request in earlier, but there was a 2-year window curve. And there was also COVID at that time as part of the learning curve that they didn't meet quarterly. So a variety of reasons. And I think now they're on the right page for November. And they, as you mentioned, I believe you mentioned there, in 2 or 3 months, they committed to bringing those items forward at the last meeting. I'm not sure if that helps or not, but in the history of their program, and I'll end with this, they brought a lot of these items are visual improvements for the city and assistance to ongoing park programs that enhance the area. But there was definitely a learning curve in how to appropriate and bring things to the council.
Thank you,
So-
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. That explained it very well.
Yeah, we're still running into difficulties about how to spend this money. I think the first thing you said, Jessica, was we didn't anticipate all the money that would be brought in. And so I see difficulties with all that money going to the NIC. So we're gonna have a conversation about that. And how do we correct it to the point where they have the ability to know pretty much what's coming in and already have what they kind of like want to do. Because giving them the money, was it July 1st, and then saying you have all the way to November to come up with your list, those things have to be implemented by the engineering department, right? And everybody else, and that only leaves them 6 months to get it done. And technically you encumber it, but what we're finding out now is all those things are rolling over. They haven't been done yet, and now we're asking them to come up with a new list of stuff. So that's unfair to the commission itself, and then that's definitely unfair to the staff, because some of those things are what we consider capital improvement projects, and there's significant planning that has to take place to use them. And I would just say, well, on that list, it says $70,000 for that wall sign, number 8. And I thought we discussed that may not be what we want to spend on that type of sign. So the council has some work to do to give you guys better numbers, because I don't want those numbers to go forward. And that's not what we wanted to do as a council. All right, you have
Just one other point. I think if you staff gave them November to bring it back, as well, that was staff's recommended, not you. I'll make that perfectly clear. So if you told them September, October, they would get it done. And also, it's important to understand, I believe it's important to understand, they don't make these recommendations by themselves. They're inclusive of other commissions and support team members of the city, like Sustainable Seaside and FOSFA. It's a come together, unified effort. It's not one commission making recommendations without the input of the residents directly or indirectly. I think that, and I think majority of these items have been moved forward. I know about the 70,000, but I know all the bicycle racks and the park stuff and the enhancements of Catino Park has been moved forward, just to be, I don't necessarily, anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I believe the majority are rolling over, so I'm just giving information. I don't want to go back and forth. You make good points, but the council needs to clean some of these things up. Because, what is in January, what is it? If we adopt this budget July 1st, what is the amount of money that they have to come up with more projects? Or what is the amount of money?
$398,000.
And right now, we haven't spent the money that we gave them last year, is that correct?
They have,
It's encumbered, but have we completed those projects?
um,
No, well, you just said no.
no.
Okay, that's what I'm just trying to be clear on. Because eventually we're gonna get behind because we're already behind. And there's no guarantee that most of those things will be done in this fiscal year. Unless you guys tell us they could be done. But eventually we're gonna get a year behind and just keep rolling over. But that's a conversation, I say again, that the council has to have, and we'll have it at the appropriate time. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the building department. And now we have our last department for this first study session, which is the police department. Excuse me, seem to have lost my notes. Okay. So the final presentation will review the 24-25 budget for the police department. The number of full-time employees went down from 51 to 49 approved positions for fiscal year 24-25. This was due to freezing an administrative analyst position, as well as one police officer. That leaves 4 vacant police officers at the time of this budget, but Commander Pasconi will update on the progress filling those vacant positions during the highlights for the police department. Personnel services are budgeted at 13 million, services and supplies at 1.8 million, capital outlay and debt at 200 and, excuse me, thank you. Capital outlay and debt at 255,000 and internal service charges are 2.6 million. So that is a total of 17.8 million in expenditures for the police department. Looking at the department sources of revenue, fees, fines, and reimbursements are projected at 311,000, special revenue at 342,000, grants and other revenue at 51,000, and the remaining revenue support is from 17.1 million from general fund taxes. Almost all of the budget expenditure variances are attributed to personnel cost increases of 1.3 million as the department continues to rebuild its police force and cost of living adjustments take effect. The fiscal year budget includes amounts for what we now believe is 3 vacant police officer positions. In an effort to present to council a balanced budget, the police department opted to freeze 1 administrative analyst and 1 police officer. And with that, I'll turn it over to Commander Pasconi to give some highlights about the police department's accomplishments and goals.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Acting City Manager, City Attorney, members of the public. My name is Justin Pasconi. I'm a commander for the Police Department. I'm going to give you some of our accomplishments from the fiscal year of 2023 and 2024 and some of our goals for 2025. As the most visible symbol of government, the Seaside Police Department provides ethical, procedurally just, and compassionate law enforcement serves through the highest standards of performance and conduct Our motto is trust, transparency, respect, unity, service, and training. During the 23-24 fiscal year, the Seaside Police Department established the CHAMP program, a program to youth leaders from the community. The police department has also established a traffic enforcement comprising of 4 motor officers. The police department also worked with Flock Safety to install fireworks detecting devices to help curb firework violations. Crime was also reduced at an all-time low of 37%, exceeding our goal of 10% crime reduction. That's compared to the previous year where we had a 13% reduction. The goals for the Seaside Police Department for this upcoming fiscal year is to increase the investigations division, continue to expand the traffic enforcement team, expand the Flock safety camera network, and expand the police department drone team. We also want to continue to be one of the most highly trained police departments in the peninsula and the Monterey County. And with that, I will take any questions.
All right, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
I think this is good news, my question, hopefully, and you can share that with us. In the budget, police budget, in the police staffing, fully funded, is all the money fully funded? And how many officers were you short last year compared to your short this year? Like 9 from last year, now you're only down short 4, I'm making that up, but that's probably ballpark. So can you share that?
Yes, we were short 6 the previous year, and this year we're short 3 vacant positions.
And just to be more clear, the challenge of hiring police officers throughout the state and probably throughout the nation is monumental, probably to say the least, is that, and maybe that's too strong of a word, but it's really tough. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, it is.
If we are fully budgeted, I assume we're currently recruiting for new officers to ensure the department's fully staffed. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is. We're continuing to always recruit.
There seems to be, well, let's just go with not the administration analyst, but the short or freezing 1 police officer, if I heard correctly. Is that something that we want to do? Are there any safety concerns related to that? I know we're trying to help each other out as it relates to the budget, but then public safety is important. Can you provide some insight, I guess is.
Yes, I can give you a little bit of a background if I may. So we had an officer that was on medical leave since 2021, that they weren't with the department. They've recently left the department. And we're using that position since that officer wasn't there, and we're freezing that position. So no, it's not going to affect public safety. In fact, we're actually in the process of hiring 2 to 3 more officers as we speak.
Good. Okay, then if I see it correctly, on page 138, it talks about a $200,000 increase in public and police support staff. Just explain why.
We hired 2 records technicians during this fiscal year.
This is a new question, I just thought of it. The 2 people on the inspecting for tickets, 2-hour parking and things of that nature. Was that last year or the year before? And are they providing quality service to ensure that people are following the law, not only on the business area, but in the neighborhoods as such?
So I can't remember the exact year that they were hired. If I can defer that to the acting city manager.
Through the mayor. I believe it was a year prior to that. But yes, I can answer the second half of that question. Is they are tremendous in enforcing and addressing parking issues throughout our community.
And then my last one, I think it's on page 139. 9, there's a $30,000 budget for veterinarian services. And I'm just guessing here, does that include SNP or is that increased cost for SPCA? I just know that it's $30,000 and I guessed it's SNP based on some allocations that we had done in the recently. It was just a guess.
Yes, we've had two significant increases, one for SPCA and also SNP.
So am I hearing you correctly? Then you budget a certain amount in this fiscal year for SNP, and I assume is that 10,000?
Yes, we did. 10,000.
Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia Rosola.
Thank you for the presentation. Are the fireworks fines included in fees, fine and reimbursements? And if so, what percentage?
I believe it is. I'll just have to take a moment to look at information up and we can proceed with your other questions at that time.
Awesome. Would the special revenue fund be the asset forfeiture that that the department does? Or special revenue fund?
Also answer that other question. It does fit the classification of a special revenue fund. Yes.
Awesome. And then I guess I just want clarification on page 136, item 242, automated criminal justice. What does that mean?
That's one of our database systems that we use. And so there was a significant increase in that due to inflation.
Gotcha. Awesome. Just wanted to confirm. And then on page 137, item 2060, blood and alcohol, I see an increase there as well. I just wanted to know a little bit the background. Because I see activity through 403 was 5,000, but you're requesting 2,000 for 25.
I don't have the specific information for that line item.
What would blood and alcohol be considered? I'm assuming DUIs, right?
I believe it's our EPAS machines and repairs, if I'm correct on that. I would have to defer that also to the acting city manager.
Through the mayor. Thank you. Yes, it has to do with our EPAS machines, our devices where somebody would blow into a device to measure their blood alcohol content. It also covers the cost when we take somebody for a blood draw at the hospital and the fees that were charged from the hospital. And we enforce DUIs regularly. So that cost is pretty standard in there. And you can see some of the activity through there was pretty expensive. So we think this is a decent amount to keep us steady.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, because if you guys spent 5,000 and you're requesting 2,000, there's clearly a need.
There is a need, and we'll have to probably adjust it as we move on. It's a low amount, but I think we'll be okay moving forward with this particular amount. And if it's something that produces a problem, we'll revisit that at mid-year or at another time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh. And if you have a moment, I can tell you, I confirmed. So with the fireworks citations, we actually have been recording that revenue in our single revenue account we have for administrative citations. And since most of those citations are usually in the building and code enforcement division, that's where we're recording as well the fireworks citations.
So it's not in the city attorney's account, it's not in the police account, now we think it's in the code enforcement account.
It absolutely is in code enforcement.
I believe you, I just think, that's a concern of the council about how well are we doing collecting that, and I know you guys have a program where we will encumber their funds by, what is the process that you?
It's the Franchise Tax Board Revenue Diversion Program.
Yeah, it's just, once we do that, just come back and let us know where that is gonna be collected at, right? And I guess if you mix it in somewhere to make it easier, just be able to always divide it out like you are able to do now. But I know the council are going to continue to ask, we're finding these people. And we're not finding them for the money, we're finding them for compliance, so, but are they paying the fines at the end of the day? Right, so. Please continue. Well, I think that was, we might,
We do have a committee, so.
you have a, which one?
uh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just before I forget, why don't we put the commissions in the proper page in the proper department? Instead of going all the way back.
If the mayor gives staff direction, we can move the commission's budgets to be included in the budget summary for the managing department.
So with the Community Safety Advisory Commission, Mr. Mayor and City Council, I'll defer this to the acting city manager.
Thank you, Commander. Yes, our body has been up and running for over a year now. And this advisory commission is really to provide advisory support and guidance and input to the liaison, which is myself as a police chief. And as you can see up here, we have our team, our commission, who meet every single month. And it's been very effective, and we've had some pretty hot topics that have occurred in policing in Seaside. We've been able to speak to this commission and get some good guidance, whether it be an issue involving one of our officers, whether it be a critical incident, or even the issue of fireworks. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions? I would just say, and they're required to make that yearly report to the council. All right, yeah, go ahead.
Going back on the police department, is the Lights On program accounted for in the budget? I know it's a grant program as well, but I just wanted to know if that's still going to continue.
Yes, it is accounted for.
Sweet, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then what I'll do is I'll go back to Jessie and see if she wants to have anything before we close and open up for public comment, and then the council can make some closing comments to get us ready for the next day. Or if there's anything you want to say about the next day, or the city manager about tomorrow, public comment, I'll give you a chance. So go ahead.
Yeah, there's nothing further I want to say about our current study session. I just want to note that in addition to taking public comment after the end of this study session, my information is available on the city's website. Jessie Riley, acting finance director or assistant finance director, and you can reach out to me directly with any questions that I will respond to in the study session tomorrow. And that's all, the only comment I have.
Okay, thank you so much. We will open up for public comment.
I don't know how to do that thing. I'll just hold it. Linda Cunningham, homeless committee member, but I'm talking as a Seaside resident. I would like to increase the funding for SNP. SNP costs $4,000 a clinic. If a $10,000 budget would mean 2.5 clinics next year. During this clinic, I don't know if anybody's ever been to one of these events. They will fix 25 to 30 animals in one day. If they did If they did 25 pets, if they were to fix 25 pets in one clinic, that's $160 an animal. And that really is meaningful to the citizens of Seaside. They have a wait list. Whenever I recommend people call the SNP bus, they're like, oh, the wait's so long. SPCA, the wait's so long. This is a valuable service to the citizens of Seaside. And I would like to see we continue with the every other month SNP that we had this. Actually, I'd like to see SNP every month. But if we continue with 6 SNP bus clinics, that's $24,000. Somebody can check my math. 4 times 6, 24,000. And I would like to see that increased by fixing animals so they don't have babies, means less animals get turned into the surrendered at the SPCA, which probably costs us probably 100 plus something per animal. And if you think about 6 kittens, how much does that cost the city of Seaside when somebody dumps 6 kittens at the SPCA? How about 10 puppies? I didn't know dogs could have like 10, 15, 20 puppies in one litter. It's mind boggling. And if you think all those get dumped at the SPCA, this is extremely expensive for the city of Seaside. And the SNP bus is really meaningful. And I would like to see more of the budget go to SNP so we can get those 6 clinics, which would be $24,000. Thank you. I don't know how to make it fit in there. I don't want to break it. I'm just gonna set it down. Sorry. I still. I can't drive cats though.
Public comment remains open.
Mayor, there are currently no hands raised on Zoom for public comment.
Public comment remains open. Seeing no one, seeing no hands, public comment is closed. Bring it back to the dais. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to be clear about a couple things here is in the veterinary services, we have approximately $10,000 that was added for SNP bus specifically. And the charges for SPCA actually fall under the subcontracted work. And last year we were already at 68,000 and we budgeted for 70,000 and we can expect a minimum of about 10,000 as the commander stated for SPCA. And my numbers are a little rough because I don't have them in front of me, but I can tell you currently today under our contract with the SPCA, any animal that is turned into Seaside that we take to the SPCA, whether it be a mouse or a dog, we pay $184 per animal, even if we never have contact with that animal. So we've increased our services with animal control. So we are encouraging people to first come to us so we can try to find other avenues of adoption and resources through nonprofits so we don't have to incur those costs and actually give some of these animals a good chance. In July of this year, the cost will go up to $250 per animal. We did some really good negotiations led by Seaside PD late last year, and we determined that they will not be charging us this price for every animal. So if we have a mouse moving forward, we will not be charged $250. We'll be charged a much smaller amount. So it shouldn't be that much of an impact overall, but then the year after prices will go up again to around $300 per animal. So we're working very hard, but yes, we did focus on a budget for SNP bus as well as covering our costs with the animal shelter through SPCA. Thank you, Mayor.
Any comments from questions from the council?
Just one brief.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, sir.
At least I'm consistent, right? I just, again, thank you staff very much for all your hard work. As we look in tomorrow, I'm just very concerned related to the commission areas, which are advisory groups rather than programmatic groups. I'm concerned that we take care of city responsibilities that impact the residents. We are down a building inspector, we are park staff, you're going to hear down year 2, and that's 4 in 2 years. You're down to potentially maybe or maybe not a police officer. There's a lot of civil engineer, things that can make the city grow quicker. So therefore, we could provide more services. We're opening up a fire station too in 2 or 3 years, and a lot of budgetary dollars are going to be impacted by that, be it fire trucks, uniforms. I think taking care of ourselves internally to the best we can is very important. I'll talk a little bit tomorrow that maybe not be appreciated, but I think internal care of service to residents is important. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
No, anybody else? No, those are good comments about services to residents, and those services cost money. And so it's kind of hard to say we want to do all these services, but then we talk about the significant amount of employee salary on the budget. That's what we do, deliver services through employees. And I just want to thank the city manager and the finance director for doing everything they can do to make sure we're not talking about layoffs. Yeah, we're talking about freezing some positions, and we're talking about some other belt tightening, but I haven't heard that yet, and I'm glad we haven't heard that. And that's part of our commitment to the citizens and the workers, that we had the ability to do that this year. Because I'm following a couple other cities, and they don't have the luxury of not laying off, and of course they did freezing first, but some of them have to reduce their employees. And I just want to thank the work of the previous city manager, the current acting city manager, the previous finance director, and the current acting finance director, and all of our employees, where when the acting city manager said, hey, let's dig a little deeper, they were able to cut a little more from their budget. And hopefully we could just keep on moving and just go through this like everybody else is going through this. We're not the only city that's facing budget constraints. It's how we deal with it, how we move forward. And I think the finance director had a couple of good suggestions that she started off with, and hopefully we can look towards that. And then I do think towards the end of tomorrow evening, the council is going to have some decisions to make about where do we adjust some of these funding levels for these programs, and where do we cut back to provide more room for any unforeseen issues that may come forward, let alone some of the things that we have not funded as of yet. And there's not a lot of budget room excess. So we're going to find that money in other places, because it is other things and other parts and programs in this community that would like their fair share of the budget. Having said that, there being no further issue on this agenda, we're at item number 6. And so there being no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.